Welcome everyone to Haven of Horror. As always, I am Subject, and I have Robert Oscar Wilde. That didn't come out right.
That works. I'll take
Um,
it.
how's it going?
Pretty good. Pretty good. We're ready to watch a couple of good films.
That is correct. So
And
you
this
had
works
not
out
seen
because
these
I've been on a
beforehand.
bit of a vampire kick. Sorry, what?
So you have not seen these beforehand, right?
Yes, this week was my first viewing of both versions.
Okay.
But I've heard about them for a long time.
So let me let the right one in. Well, okay, so let me ask you this first. Which title do you prefer? Because I think "Let Me In" works better.
I'm of two minds about it because Let Me In's, it's a shorter title. It's a more obvious title. Let the Right One In, my understanding, it's from. Well, I guess both titles are from the vampire's perspective, but Let the Right One In is like referring to the human, the companion of I the vampire have to let the right one in. I have to be careful who I choose, who I let into my life, and befriend me. So I think they both work. Let Me In, it's simpler.
Mhm.
So it's hard for me to say I have a preference, but it's interesting to compare and contrast.
Okay, so because I
But
might forget about it by the time we get there, can I say something that made me laugh really hard watching the American dub or American version?
go for it.
And this is something that only you and I would get. So they changed the names, right?
Yes.
It's Abby and Owen.
Yep. that's that's weirdly specific to The Last of Us.
Yeah, that's just something that you and I would have gotten. Noah wouldn't have gotten that if he was here.
And I was kind of confused by those name changes though, because the excuse is, well, these are Americanized, but you could have just called them Oscar and Ellie. All you have to do is change the spelling to be more, American. So it's not a
Ellie,
big deal. I just found that
yes.
weird.
Oscar, I don't know if I've ever met anybody named Oscar.
Oh, really?
I don't
Yeah. Uh,
know.
you just mentioned Oscar Wilde up top, but
Why would I've never met him? And he wasn't American, was he?
I don't remember. But no, I've known Oscars, but here it's usually spelled with C. But in the Swedish Oscar, or at least in this case, it's spelled with a K. So that's all you have to change. And Ellie, although with Ellie, I was unclear on what exactly the pronunciation was because through the accent, I couldn't really tell.
Well, without it, do you have any other preamble that you want to throw in before we start? Let the right one in from 2008.
Yeah. No, let's get into it.
All right, 1 second. Let me make sure. Okay. So this is on Peacock. If you're watching it streaming, get to timestamp 0 past all the menus. In 3, 2, 1, go. So let's just get this question out of right off the bat. Which one do you prefer?
Watching both of them back to back, I'm gonna say that this original gets the edge for me. It's a little more methodical. It's a little slower, but there's just something surprisingly more sadder about it. It lingers on things a bit more. There's a coldness to this one that's in the American version too. Um, but there's something a little bit more natural about like the way the acting and the dialogue is paced. This might be a better edited movie. Not that the American one's poorly edited; they're just edited differently, different sensibilities. But this one stuck with me more, and I might have had a different reaction if I watched them in reverse, because they are so similar and in the same place that this one really stuck with me. And then watching the American one was like, oh, it's the same movie. It ends in the same place, but. So I think this one had more of an effect on me, but it's also the one I watched first, so that's probably just to be expected. But I think they're both very good.
One reason made a big deal is he wasn't looking at this movie; he's just readapting the book. So obviously, similarities are unavoidable. But a lot of people were like upset about this movie apparently, saying it wasn't needed, and the author was like, "No, I got like two great adaptations of my debut novel. Like that doesn't happen often."
Yeah, well, I can understand it in that this is one of those remakes. When we get to the next version, that does come pretty quickly after the first one. So if you saw this and loved it, you might have the reaction of, "Well, this is unnecessary. Why do this?" And we just saw something happen very similar recently with Speak No Evil, where that remake came out like a fucking year after the first one. The Blumhouse was quick on that one. And there is this trend back then and still now of, well, here's a popular foreign film. Let's Americanize it. Let's remake this and repackage it for an American audience. And I think there is a cynical way to do that. I just don't think this one falls victim to it. As you alluded to, the author was on board with it. He had his support. That's a major factor. And Matt Reeves was a fan of the book, and it really resonated with him. And this was a very personal project for him. So it's just a case by case basis. It depends on the situation. This is not one of those cynical Hollywood. Well,
Robert,
we own the
pace
rights to
yourself.
this
We
IP.
have
Let's
4 hours to go.
Nah, that's the gist of it. Yeah, you see what I'm saying.
So I will be the contrarian. I preferred the Reeves version, and part of that is just there's a barrier for this movie. I don't know what I'm taking away from their acting sometimes. However, the American version has some really bad CGI that doesn't need to be there.
It does. I think both versions have at least one scene with a bad visual effect, and they're both different.
And I just love Chloe Moretz. Like she's such a cool actress.
She's great. And I personally, even though there's the language barrier, I actually preferred the kids in this one. If we have to compare them, the kids in this were just a little more. Don't want to say honest, but their performances were a bit more raw to me. They just felt very real. In the American one, I feel more like, oh yeah, I'm watching. They're very good actors. It's not a bit. I think both those kids were great. But there's just something that I found a bit more haunting and just real about this one.
Mhm. I was at this thought. This is what Twilight would have been if they were actually vampires in those books. Because this is the
Yeah, it
same
is.
year as that first Twilight movie.
That's true. Um, yeah, and I feel like Twilight, for better or worse, really kind of brought the romantic side of vampires back. It made vampires like cool and fun again, or like from a certain point of view. This is one of those uh things in the genre that I like. Of no, being a vampire would suck. No pun intended. This is miserable and sad and brutal, which falls into a category of a lot of vampire movies I enjoy. And then Twilight's like, yeah, now they're vegetarians. They're cool.
And
They're
most
fun.
importantly, and we'll get to that, this is not a happy ending movie.
No, not at all. So, which version do you see first, and when do you see it?
I might have saw the American one first, and that might be part of it because I know I bought it, but I don't know if I actually watched it before this version. Um, but I also get into foreign films like super late, and I think that's why there's always been kind of a disconnect. It's just I didn't grow up with that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, this also comes out in a time when like a lot of like those American remakes of like Japanese films are coming out, like The Ring or The Grudge. Like this is all kind of that era.
You know what? I might have seen the American. I don't. I think I might have saw this version first, but I bought the American version first because I'd read the book. I got the
Oh, cool.
book by Off Chains. Um, This kid looks really familiar. The bully kid.
Yeah, for sure. This is a trope that started to bug me in recent stuff. I think the story being set in the 80s helps, but both versions have just straight up Stephen King bullies. These are the
Well,
psychopathic
this whole story
insane.
feels very much like a Stephen King esque story.
Yes.
Meanwhile, like this guy's house.
Yeah. And some other vampire things this reminded me of Interview with the Vampire is a big one where that has a 12-year-old girl turned into a vampire and being forced to grow up but not age physically and the torment of that. Near Dark's another one. Tonally, this is closer to something like Near Dark, which is just gloomy and miserable and sad, and it has a 12-year-old boy who can't grow up and he hates it. He thinks it's awful. And are
You know,
all
it is a
stories
shame
that,
we remade this so quickly because we were talking about this being a Stephen King thing. Flanagan would have done a killer adaptation of this.
yeah, he'd be great, but it also feels like a story that, okay, we've probably adapted this enough. I don't know if we need another one, but obviously Flanagan would be a good choice.
The key word there being it's a shame we've already adapted this here in America.
Yeah.
Maybe he can pick up where that TV show left off. And what's interesting is this is also kind of going back to Dracula. Like this guy is basically her Renfield.
That's true. And a big element of this that makes being a vampire be miserable, that's actually not in the Dracula book, is them being allergic to sunlight or literally dying in sunlight. That's a big
Mhm.
element of this story. And in a lot of recent vampire things, I'm almost kind of ready to get away from, just because it's such an obvious, like, oh yeah, like if you're gonna die by sunlight, yeah, this is a horrible trade-off. I kind of like to balance it out and see more vampire stories where that isn't a factor, because we do that so rarely now. But this is still very good.
That's just so ingrained in the mythology at this point. You're never going to get away from it.
Mhm.
Dracula, I
And
think, at this
this,
point is more so the outlier for not doing.
mhm. And this character, he's more than just a Renfield. Like, no, he needs her, because how the fuck else is she gonna survive?
Mhm. It's also
And
funny with the whole sunlight thing that they decided to set the American one in New Mexico.
yeah, although it's still there's still a lot of snow in that version.
Yeah.
Now, you've said you read the book before. How much do you remember? Like the
Not a whole
changes,
lot.
omissions?
That was like a decade ago. It's a great book.
And it sounds very interesting. I certainly like these movies. Author of that did write this screenplay as well. This is one of those situations,
Oh, okay.
which is pretty cool.
Do you read this as more like kind of pathetic, or it's sad that he's gotten to this point?
Both. This kid, more in this version than the American one, is like almost kind of a serial killer in the making. Like he's not there yet, but he could get there, which is obviously important with the choices he makes and where the story ends. But you know, he's on that path, and you do feel really sorry for him because you're seeing all the reasons for that.
This is how bad I am at judging ages. For like the first half of this movie, I refused to believe that she was actually 12.
Kids age weird.
He does not look 12. I like to compare them when I watch them back to back. But the other thing I like about the American version is the way it's like lit and the cinematography. This, a lot of the shots are very bright.
Yeah, they have a very different feel. This one's a lot more very cold and sterile. The American one, you get a lot more variety of colors. So I don't really have a preference. They're just, you know, it's interesting to compare.
It, it was a bitch to make the thumbnail though. This does make me want to look into more Swedish horror because I don't hear a lot about like Swedish cinema at all. This
Me
and
neither.
the girl with the dragon tattoo, I think, are the only two that have kind of broken over here.
And the Swedish Chef from Muppets. He's pretty iconic.
Eh, you take them really. Ironically,
But
both of those got American remakes from, I guess, visionary directors.
yeah, that's a good point.
At least this one didn't get a rushed sequel that was such a downgrade. Yeah, it blew my mind when I figured out they did go ahead and make the next Girl with the Dragon Tattoo movie here in America. And everything in it apparently is like a downgrade. I don't know if you've seen that.
Nope. I have not.
That movie came out in 2011. So they made a sequel 7 years later in 2018, and they went from David Finch to Fede Alvarez.
Yeah, and I like Fede Alvarez.
I do, but I don't think he was the right person for that kind of movie.
Probably not. But this is another difference I'm talking about, where this kid in this version, he's like interested in murder and true crime. He has a, he has a scrapbook, and it's probably not the most healthy thing for a 12-year-old to be into.
All Swedish 12-year-olds are into that. I'm sure nothing will go wrong.
And I think that's the biggest difference between these versions. Not to an extreme degree, but I think in the American one, they are for both kids trying to make them a bit more innocent.
Mhm.
In both cases, both the kids in this one are a little more damaged and haunted right at the start.
Oh, see, I never read that with at least not with Abby in the American version. She's still very much that same.
She's very sad, but at least the way she plays it and the way it's executed, I feel like her intentions are maybe a little more honest
Mhm.
and sincere. This one plays it a little more ambiguous, in my opinion, in my reaction to it. Of how much does I guess her name in this one's Ellie? How much does she actually care about Oscar, or is she just using him? I think they play it a bit more ambiguously in this one. That's at least how I read it.
I guess we'll have to see.
Now, if I am going to nitpick this one, and why I can understand preferring the American one, is the other notable difference is here. This one spends a lot more time with the neighbors, and kind of splinters off into a couple different subplots. And it's debatable how necessary they are. I can understand if you feel like it kind of slows down the pacing a bit, or how necessary developing these side characters really is. Whereas in the American one, we almost exclusively see the neighbors like through the kids' eyes. Like we don't really get to know them.
Yeah, and I think from a narrative standpoint, I definitely think you're onto something there. That works a little better for me. The only one that I would like to see developed more in the American one is the lady that gets bit.
Yeah, that subplot's trimmed down a lot.
I'm gonna take back. I do want Flanagan to do this again because this would be a good like 4-episode miniseries. Just flesh it all out.
Yeah, I mean, it would have potential.
I'd rather that than that crappy Showtime show that doesn't have anything to do with this.
Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking with that, but it was canceled. So,
I would love to see what that unsold one, the unaired pilot was. If that was the same
oh,
show
weird.
or.
Yeah, what we're saying is let's leave this property alone unless it's Flanagan. He's the only one who gets a shot at it.
No, I do really like how she plays this. Um, but I find that in both versions, I like Ellie. That's also funny. And here it's Ellie. In America, it's Abby. What is happening? Uh,
Yep.
in both versions, I prefer the vampire girl to the boy. But you're right. It's very Kubrick in its cinematography,
Mhm.
or like it's Kubrick in The Shining.
Yeah, like you said, it's very bright. And like I said, it's not a major issue. I just feel like scenes like this are paced a little slower and take a bit more time and are a bit more natural than this one. And the American one, like it's still fine, but scenes like this with the Rubik's Cube do go by a little quicker.
I think the movie's also a few minutes shorter than this one.
Yeah, I'm not sure which one's technically longer. Like they are around the same length.
Somebody at Google's gonna be like, why does this guy keep Googling let the right one in? All right, so let the right one in is 1 hour and 54 minutes. And let me in is actually an hour 56, so it's longer by
Oh,
2 whole
weird.
minutes.
Yeah, that's just interesting given how much side stuff that version cuts.
Mm. Let Matt Reeves cook.
And not to play the comparison game over and over again ad nauseum, but this is a scene that I think is more effective in this version with this victim coming up because in the American one, that's where you get that really bad CGI.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't understand like the obsession with CGI in the remake.
I mean, there's not like a ton of it. It's just in a few scenes, but yeah, it's noticeable. It's what we were doing at the time. To its credit, most of that movie is shot in camera.
Matt Reeves, we expect better of you, you bastard.
Well, it was an independent movie. Didn't have a huge budget. It didn't still didn't do particularly well. Like I'm not surprised that's not the type of movie you see selling well here in America, but it
Yeah, it
wasn't
only made
exactly a hit.
27 million on its 20 million budget. God, that
Yeah,
movie cost 20 million.
yeah. So I mean, it got good reviews at least, but it may have stalled out his career for a minute because until he somehow gets attached to Planet of the Apes, which the rest is history because that ended up being a perfect match.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a 4 year gap there. I guess you could say it stalled it, but if he wrote, did he write the Apes movies? No,
I
he
think he was
didn't.
a co-writer. Oh, okay.
He wrote the
But
third one, but he's not credited on Dawn. I'd like to imagine that he started writing the Batman in 2014. It just took him that long to finish the script. But yeah, that's maybe it did. I don't know. Well, it looks like it was not so much a stall. It's just he had a few projects fall through. Like he was supposed to do a
oh, okay.
Twilight Zone movie, but then
Oh,
he left.
okay, that tracks. That is
Oh, he was also supposed to do an adaptation of the short story 8 o'clock in the Morning, which was previously adapted in a little known film you may have heard of called They Live.
oh, interesting.
So he was going to kind of remake They Live.
Yeah, and that's whenever Hollywood does get that off the ground, we're probably gonna watch it and think, "Damn it, I wish it was Matt Reeves," because that sounds like similar to this, where he was going back to this.
The
What he
book.
probably wanted was to go back to the story and put his spin on it. And what the studio wants is no, we want a remake of that cult John Carpenter movie that didn't do well, and we think our remake's gonna do well for some reason. But he's someone I'd trust to
Yeah.
put a good spin on that.
No, I think I'm not anti remake, but I've only seen one good Carpenter remake, and it was mixed reception best.
Oh yeah.
I like it, but I know a lot of people who are fans of the original hate it, and vice versa.
Well, I've always said it's an easier sell for me if the pitch is no, no, we're going back to the source material and doing a new adaptation of that.
Hmm.
I want something different. The 1998 Psycho is not a new adaptation of the Psycho book. It is a shot for shot remake of the Psycho movie.
So when are they going to make Let Me In versus the Predator?
Oh god. Is the vampire child gonna have autism in that one?
Yes. Oh god, I can't wait to do a commentary on that movie. It counts.
Thank God for Prey. Like the Predator, like that was a franchise killer. Like fuck,
Yes,
they're
there
never gonna make one of
was.
these again.
I was telling one of my buddies about all the different endings, and I had to look up some of them because I'd forgotten how nonsensical they were. Yeah, Newt is in that pod. Sure, that makes sense.
And she has a face mask that like looks like a face hugger, but it's not a face hugger
Yeah. Oh,
because
I
it's
forgot about that.
surprise. But we talked over it. But when Ellie kills that guy and then like twists his head, like that was a effect that got me. I was like, I was not expecting that. It's very brutal, in matter of fact. And I was curious how you felt about this because this story tones down a lot of the vampire lore a lot, and is one of those versions where if you just bite somebody, like then they become a vampire. So if to happen, you have to like drain their blood, like literally kill them before they turn. Is that does that bother you in this story?
No, 'cause it's not the
Are you fine?
focus.
Sure.
It's not like what was it that I was complaining about where the vampires were like Dracula, the Batman versus Dracula, where that's kind of the focus is. Oh, he's turning people, and they're just basically zombies. They're not really vampires. The focus is
Hmm.
always on this one vampire, and like you don't know her origin or where she came from. Plus, that hospital scene is really effective.
Oh, yeah.
Very minimalistic score here too.
Mhm.
Immersion broken. Sitting on snow sucks ass. He would not do that.
It is interesting comparing these both in that both these movies are made around the same time and they're set in the same time period. They're set in the early 80s. The things that do carry over and translate, like the Rubik's Cube, which is like, oh yeah, this was just this instant worldwide phenomenon toy when it came out. So like that plays really naturally in both versions.
Mm-hmm.
I never got good at solving Rubik's Cubes.
Mm-mm.
I have a couple, but I never solved one.
What's in the box?
So in this scene, when she says she doesn't know her birthday, do you interpret it as she is lying, or do you think she just doesn't remember when her birthday was because she's like 200 years old?
I think given the context, you can infer she's. I don't think she's lying to him yet because she's
Mhm.
still kind of trying to like either at least make him think that she wants to push him away. Um, but I like the idea that she is just so old now that she's forgotten so much.
Which would make sense, and not a thing you think about in a lot of vampire adaptations. But the idea of immortality, this is a story about the sadness of that, and like, oh yeah, like what's the point of being immortal if you're just gonna forget shit? You don't discuss that in a lot of vampire stories, like the stuff that fades. Like, okay, your body's immortal, but like your memory can't be. Like you're gonna lose stuff. Like at what point are you even the same person you were like 100 years ago?
Although there is also a read that she only approaches him because that other guy is starting to become old and slow.
Yep.
Personally, I find this more interesting if she is a manipulative monster that just happens to find the right person that would be willing to go along with it. Um,
And let the right one in, so to speak.
yes. Like one of my favorite relationships in TV is between a vampire and a human, but the show always recognizes that it is doomed to fail, and it is a tragic romance.
So here's I guess a region barrier. The teacher leaves and just leaves this kid in the room alone. I guess that's a thing in Sweden. Or like he's gonna leave and like turn off the light and everything. I'm like, that's they're allowed to do that.
That does seem strange.
So that's one of those little
Although
bits
maybe
that's
I
tweaked
missed
a
it. Is
little.
he supposed to be at detention?
No, that was just in class, and then they all leave, and the teacher's like, "Hey, you coming?" He's like, "No,
It's
I'm just gonna
dark
stay
out
and work on
already.
this still." Yeah, well, the idea is he stayed after class for a bit, so he's
Right.
been there for a while
How
because
fucking
he's
long was he in that classroom?
I don't know. I also don't know how dark it gets in Sweden,
Yeah.
like in the winter. Like that could be a factor. Like this could be 5 o'clock for all I know.
Even still, that's a long time to stay at school.
Yeah. And like I said, at up top, I'm getting kind of sick of the Stephen King bully trope. This gets a pass for me because it's set in the '80s. That helps. But I'm still like, God, where's an adult? I'm, I'm frustrated watching this.
I don't mind it here because it informs his character further.
Yeah,
Although I'm not
it's
sure
very
what's
important.
happening here.
He's whipping him with a stick.
But that is the most pathetic whipping I've ever seen. What is that bully's name?
Oh, I don't remember what the lead bully's name is.
Hmm. Oh no, sorry. Her name isn't Ellie in this. It's Eli.
Eli. Okay, yeah, I just wasn't sure how it was pronounced.
That might be why they changed it because I don't think that would translate to an American audience.
Mhm. So his relationship with his mother is interesting in both versions because she's not like horrible. She's not abusive. Like she clearly loves him, but her big flaw is that she's just kind of neglectful. Like she asks him like, "Oh, how did you get cut?" And he's like, "I fell at recess." And that's the end of it. She doesn't press any further. When most parents in that situation, I think, should be able to tell, like, okay, I can tell you're lying to me. But yeah, regardless of that whole situation, there's going to be bits throughout the story where she's not as there as she's not as present as she should be. And is why he makes a choice he makes at the end, which again is just really sad because usually in the story you think like, oh, like that we're gonna make the mom character abusive, and that's why he leaves her at the end. It's kind of sadder that like no, she clearly like they clearly love each other. It's just not a super close relationship. She has her own issues, and the American one has a different spin on what she's going through. But again, it just makes the whole scenario very sad.
Oh, so he did write like a sequel short story to this.
Yeah, I saw that.
I have not read that. I'd be very curious to see where the author predicts these characters end up. Um, yeah, no, I agree with you on the mom. It's weirder in the remake because they involve the dad at least over the phone. Um,
Yeah, you never see him in the remake.
although I don't know if you picked up on this. I might not have if I hadn't read it. Did you recognize the voice on the line when
I
he's talking to the?
I know it's Elias Koteas, which is really weird, but I mean he's good, so I'm cool with it. I
No, what's
don't know if I read,
weird?
but I read that ahead of time.
Yeah, it's weird because he's also in the movie as a different character.
Yes, yeah. Maybe there's something thematically going on with that. Like, we'll get
I'm
into
pretty
it
sure they
more
were just low on money and it was like, "Can you record this?" Okay, so he's portrayed by Patrick Ridmark. I don't know if that's how you pronounce that. Uh, the the way Sweden spells Patrick is cool. They just take out the C, so it's
Oh,
Patrik.
makes more sense to me.
That's always cooler though, right? Like Eric with just a K instead of a C.
Yeah, yeah. We do C's weird in America.
Oh, apparently he was only in 3 things, and they were all from the same year.
And it's kind of a shame because this teacher character is developed a bit more in the American one, but then they cut most of his scenes out, which is kind of unfortunate. But I do kind of like him in that one. They reversed that footage. I just picked up on that with the cat
Oh yeah,
snarling.
I never noticed stuff like that. I'm excited to see what we land on tonight. I'm excited.
Yeah, and neither of us have played our respin cards.
We have it.
Held up on that. This is another element that you don't see in a lot of vampire stuff. The idea, like, oh no, she physically can't eat like normal human food. She can only consume blood. She's gonna humor him and try this out as a little snack, and then we'll proceed to throw it up. Like, oh yeah, that sucks.
Something else. There was something else that I've seen that in, but I can't remember now.
I probably have.
So I like that idea in my head just because I'm a Buffy fan. That's the one I think of. In the Buffy verse, you'll find out that vampires can eat food. They don't taste anything.
Oh, that's also bad.
No, so
That helps for blending into society, with humans, but you also don't get any pleasure out of it. Like, so
yeah,
that still sucks.
there's a really humorous scene where I'm going to leave this vague, but a character turns into a human after having been a vampire, and so like food tastes again. Just thought that was a cooler way to handle that. But yeah, we could eat it, but like it doesn't taste like anything. And this kind of story, I was thinking about this in both versions, has to be some of these scenes that they have to do in these have to be so awkward to film.
Hmm.
I simply could not make a movie like this. Spoilers: there are nude scenes in both of them. They're tastefully
Yep.
done. If I'm an adult and I'm told I have to do a nude scene in this kind of movie, nope.
It's like nope, nope.
I want nothing to do with it.
And this is one of those differences we were talking about earlier, where we actually see the kid's father in this, and he seems nice. They seem to have a good relationship, but of course, he's still divorced parents that live in different places, and
Well,
that's
it's
always a tough
interesting
thing.
that this book comes out so late because I think one of the reasons he said it in the '80s is it's hitting all of those '80s tropes: the broken
Yeah.
family, the kid that doesn't know where he belongs in that, the bullies.
Mhm. Oh yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot of vampire stories that are that have a very very metaphorical approach. Addiction's a big one that comes up in a lot of vampire stories. This one isn't just tackling adolescence. It's like trauma as it's happening. Like we always joke about like trauma in modern horror stuff, and it's usually backstory. It usually informs where a character is at. This is a story that makes you live with the trauma. It makes you experience it as it's happening, and that's just the story. It's like, yeah, it's kind of a coming of age story, but like, what if it was about all the horrible things that can potentially happen to a kid
It's
growing up, and that's just all in here.
it's not the same. Like, here's this character that had something bad happen to them, 10 years ago, and here's this evil that is going to literally represent very specifically whatever happened 10 years ago, and
Mhm.
now they have to overcome that trauma.
Right.
I'm so sick of that. Speaking of trauma, I watched Smile 2 today.
Yeah, you told me.
It was better than the first one, I'll give it that.
I'll watch it for Naomi Scott at some point.
That the song that's in the trailer, the "I Need a Doctor."
Vaguely.
It's on Spotify, and I don't even like that kind of music, but it's stuck in my head. No, she might be one of my favorite horror performers of the year. She's so good.
I've heard she's great.
That movie needs to be trimmed way down, but
I'm not surprised. That's why it's hard for me to put that high on like my watch list, just because I know. Look, I'm pretty sure that's not going to make my best five or worst five of the year, so it's hard to prioritize it. But I'll get to it eventually.
yeah, for sure. You saw the first one, right?
No, I haven't seen either of them.
Oh?
I mean, I know what happens at the end of the first one. Like, I know the spoilers, so I can be surprised by anything.
Be right back.
But scenes like this, with the vampire's protector trying to kill another victim, it's almost comical the way stuff keeps going wrong for him. But it's also implied that maybe he wants to get caught or he's just ready for this to end. So there's both a sadness and a sense of humor to the scene that I appreciate. And this is fucked up with this acid when he's gonna do it to himself. It's brutal.
It's so brutal.
Mhm. And what I will say, I like this movie. I respect it, and I like the American one too. Both versions. These aren't gonna have a lot of rewatchability for me. I
Mhm.
need the right mood for this because this is a grim, sad story.
Yeah, I would probably go back to the American one first. It's an easier watch.
Yeah, for sure. Though, to its credit, it still goes to some pretty adult, uncomfortable places. Like, it's not hard to imagine the studio PG-13 version remake of this, but no, it's still a hard R.
No,
But I do
when I
respect
say
that.
it's an easier watch, it's just it's in a language that I am familiar with, so there's not that
Hmm.
barrier. Uh, the characters come alive a little bit more for me, just because like I can tell that I think these performances are good, but it's hard to judge another language even though I can read what they're saying.
Hmm. This scene is just sad and gross. Just like, oh, the awful shit the bullies do in this.
That's disgusting. How is he not freezing to death?
Yeah, it looks like a bad time. And part of why this is so identifiable is I don't know what it was like for you at school growing up, but they always said, like, hey, if you're having an issue with a student, another student, talk to us, talk to somebody in charge. And kids rarely will, myself included. I'm not sure why that is,
It's a
or
pride
hopefully
thing.
it's a pride thing. You're more scared of the bully than you're feel protected by the people in charge. And I don't know what that says about that institution, but it's something a lot of kids feel.
This is one thing I will give this version over the American. I like the makeup that we're gonna have that guy's gonna have on a lot more in this one.
Hmm. Yeah, the remake's also going for like a CG enhanced thing that doesn't look great.
Yeah.
This effect I was impressed with. It's very simple, but I was like, oh shit, that looks like a person
Remember
crawling up that wall.
Salem's Lot? So there is one thing I remember looking it up reminded me. So this guy gets a lot more backstory in the original. In the book, he's a pedophile in the book, and it's implied that he met her when he was already a full-grown man.
Ugh. And that wasn't my read on it in this version. And clearly, Matt Reeves and I aligned on that with how he handles it in the remake. But yeah, I think I did read a little bit of the synopsis from the book, and that's probably the biggest change from the book to these adaptations is her protector being made to be a lot more sympathetic and ambiguous in his intentions.
Which I think works better because you should parallel him with Owen, who is going to be replacing
Yes.
him.
Hmm.
There's no
And
parallel if he's, well,
already evil.
yeah. And I guess you
Because
could make the case if, like, because he's a serial killer in the making. This guy's a pedophile.
well, and in the book, apparently another big change is I guess this doesn't kill him. Like he becomes a vampire after this, and is a threat that her and Oscar have to take down later, which is not in either movie version. But here, as it's presented this movie, the scene's kind of heartbreaking. Where it's like he failed her, he's given up, and it's like it, in this scene he's giving her literally all he has left of like the last thing I can literally do for you is just let you drink my blood and kill me, so this will just be over. But he's still giving her something in death, and it's really sad.
And it makes me wonder if Matt Reeves and the author, because he said the author wrote this screenplay, are kind of on that same page of that works better, or if maybe Matt Reeves wasn't as honest about we're going back to source material. It's let's do what the other movie did, but our own spin on
Because it's entirely ambiguous in this one, but by the end of it, I did interpret this as, oh, her protector, she probably met when he was a kid. He probably did have a crush on her, but in an innocent way, when he was a child, not like what the book did. And at the end of this film, my read on it was, oh fuck, like this is a cycle. This is started all over again because we find out that she's like 200 years old. It's like, oh yeah, so her protector has probably been her protector for the last like 50 years, and now Oscar's replacing that, and that's a read that they make a bit more literal in the remake.
it. Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit more ambiguous in this one.
And it's important to note that Matt Reeves wrote the screenplay for that remake.
Mm. And this scene is really uncomfortable.
Yes. This is the
Scenes
big
like
scene
this
I
are
was thinking of. No.
I know. Yeah. It seems like this. Yeah, I'm not gonna rewatch this a lot. This is disturbing.
And he has this like detached way that this actress is playing it that is really interesting. Because even
Mhm.
right after she kills her protector, she doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, she doesn't really mourn him or anything. And I guess it'd be a good time to talk about the other notable change between the movie versions is that there's kind of a reveal in this one that I did know about, that this character Eli, she was born male and was castrated. Like there's a shot in this movie that confirms that. And
Oh, I know exactly what shot you were thinking of, and I didn't pick up on that, so I was like, What the fuck
Yeah.
did you just put on the camera? Like, why did I need to see
Yeah, that's if you didn't notice, there's a scar there.
that? Uh-huh.
So that's and again, I just read some of the stuff on Wikipedia. Apparently, this is a lot more overt in the book, to the
Mhm.
point that the book actually says that her name wasn't originally Eli; it was
Yes.
Elias,
Yes.
and has now transitioned or identify as a girl. And for all intents and purposes, we're still referring to this character as her. But this movie does play ambiguous, where it's like I'm not sure, just from the movie, not the book, of how much this character like literally identifies as a girl, or if this is all just part of the manipulation. If this is entirely a front, they keep that ambiguous. And why I think this casting works, because this actress does have that kind of androgynous look, where it's like, oh, I can buy that this used to be a boy who just has long hair, and can pull off the appearance of a girl, which is an element that the American one drops.
No, the American one, I'm pretty confident saying that they're just intending for that to be
Uh,
a
it was
woman.
always a girl, which is weird because there's still a line early on where she says like, "I'm not a girl," but they put kind of a different spin on it. I thought that was a weird choice. And also, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you can't convince me that Chloe Moretz used to be a boy. Like, she looks like a doll. Like,
Whoa,
that's
you're gonna get us canceled, Robert.
probably
Um, I didn't have a problem with that line. I just read it as I'm not a girl, I'm a monster.
right. Yeah, that's more their take on it.
Huh, interesting. Like, that gives you a new read on this version with because it's not just like because you could read that with her being trans in this. There's what is that saying about like this character? Because he doesn't seem to care,
Mhm.
and I don't know what Sweden's like look on that stuff is.
Yeah, for sure. Especially with the story being set in the 80s. But again, there's a lot you could imply or interpret, where like this kid is an outsider. He is bullied. Like he's not a quote unquote normal kid. And scenes like this, I'm like, God damn it! Can we have more than one adult supervising these kids, please?
So this scene confuses me in both versions, more so in this. Because this is going to be where he whacks him with a stick, right?
Mhm.
That stick did not look like it was sharp.
So it's like frozen. He essentially
Oh,
hit the kid with ice.
ooh.
And you know what? I'm like, fuck you. The kid deserved it. It's fine.
No, the kid
He can have his
absolutely
ears back.
deserved it. This is driving
That's
me
something.
nuts, though. I just looked at this guy's filmography, the bully. He hasn't been in anything else that I've seen, but he looks so familiar.
He just he has that stock movie bully look.
That's true. And that's the interesting thing with Let Me In as well, is it does have a lot of I won't say big names, but like they're not much of unknowns.
Oh yeah, the mom in Let Me In is Nancy's mom in Stranger Things.
Whoa.
That's Mrs. Wheeler. Yeah.
God, I didn't even recognize her.
You don't see her face a lot. Like I only know that just from reading it.
But I also have that with Stranger Things. Like, I think once you get to season 3, she looks like a completely different person.
That's true. And obviously her hair and makeup is a factor in that. But yeah. Now, this plays pretty close in both versions, where the teacher does notice what's going on, but before they can really do anything about it, they're distracted by this other thing
Mhm.
going on with the body being found. But it's just one of those things where I have a low tolerance for adult characters who don't notice bullying and don't do enough about it. Um, but like I said, the teacher here, isn't like awful or abusive or anything. But when this kid gets whacked in the head, I'm like, yeah, you deserve it. It's fine. But yeah, there are like two adults here. We need more,
Especially with how many kids are there.
right?
Yeah, he enjoyed. I will say he enjoyed that a little too much.
Oh yeah, totally. Oh no, he's a little psychopath in the making, but I could still root
And I
for him.
think that's what makes this stand out is like the protagonist isn't a victim.
Right.
It's a bad ending, but it's kind of the ending he wanted.
Hmm. What is this? A Swedish chainsaw massacre?
I am kind of shocked that there aren't like a bunch of foreign remakes of that movie. Just insert country here.
This is one of the subtitles that made me laugh. We're looking at a police car, and the word police shows up. I'm like, yeah, I know. I can tell. In Swedish, it's polis, or it's like POLIS on the car, and it's
Mhm.
just police in front of it. I'm like, yeah, I know. I picked up on that from the headlights.
I also don't understand why they call him Piggy, because that's usually like left for like overweight people.
Yeah, and Oscar has this thing that's not really in the other one, where he's like in his fantasy, he's like squeal like a pig when he imagines where he fantasizes about stabbing them, which might be a callback to Deliverance, or that's just coincidence. I'm not sure, but that's one of the big infamous lines from that movie.
I don't know, it's just a payoff because like the first shot of this movie, you see is they make him like put his nose up.
Mhm.
I also haven't seen Deliverance, so
It's a great movie. It's kind of an adventure film, but also with like all the horrible fucked up shit that could happen in a hypothetical woodland adventure.
apparently Hasbro's going to stop financing movies. R.I.P. that Transformers One sequel that everybody knew
Oh
wasn't going to
no.
happen.
Well, they had a whole bunch of other movies they announced, so I guess those aren't happening.
Oh,
I mean, oh
yeah.
no.
I wonder if that means that we're not getting that Transformers and GI Joe movie.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know.
Mm.
I mean, Mattel will pick up the slack and give us stuff like the Magic 8 Ball movie that everyone was asking for.
You know what?
So this is a weird thing that's in both versions. I'm kind of surprised in the setup, but I mean, it just tracks with what this kid's into. This wasn't a thing for me growing up, but I see it in a lot of movies. Did you ever just cut your hand and do a
Mm,
blood pact with one of your buddies? Was this
mm.
just a normal thing I missed out on?
I always just assumed as a kid growing up that was like maybe something my dad's generation did because like in so many movies.
And we're like, that's so insanitary. That- that's breaking so many health code violations. Don't do that. But again, it is a scene that shows kind of the darker side of this kid, where he doesn't even like prep Eli about it. He's just like, "Oh, see, I cut my hand; it didn't hurt. You do the same." It's like, ugh.
The kid, the American one is at least somewhat more rational. He just like slices his thumb. This kid is like
Mhm.
all the way down his hand.
Yep.
Thanks subtitle. I couldn't have told you that she said go. So at this point, do you think she's just putting on this on for show? Like, go away, I'll hurt you.
um, I want to say that scene's kind of genuine. I still, I don't think she wants to bring harm to him, and is worried that she will. But like you said, I mean, that could still just be the ulterior motive. Like, no, no, no. Like she wants to use him. She wants him to become her protector, and it's kind of fucking that up. Like,
I
so
guess that
they
also
really played it.
confuses me. Is like, what does she need a protector for? Like, she's strong, fast.
Uh, both stories are about loneliness, so I think the companionship is a factor, and the fact that this is why I think the story needs them being allergic to daylight, because that cuts your day in half and what you can do. It's like she needs someone to help provide, a home or a secret place during the day when she has to sleep and not be in sunlight. I think that's the main logistical thing you need a protector for if you're a vampire in this situation.
Makes me wonder what she's gonna do for the next like I don't know decade while he grows up.
Yeah, well, he's got a bunch of money, so
Hey, look, it's Swedish Liam Neeson.
also that is way too many cats. And I like cats, but you shouldn't have that many in one house.
No, I am very like pro limits on how many animals are in a house.
Three's enough. You don't need more than three.
Three is like pushing it. I have this one friend that has like three dogs, two cats,
That,
lizards,
that's a
snakes,
lot.
bunnies. I went to stay at her house. I was like, dear God, this is a zoo. I'm ready to go. Like it was fun hanging out, but I got tired of animals. This is
So
going to be a tougher
this
double feature, though. I have to say, Robert, than like Nightmare that we did because these are so similar. It's almost like watching the same film back to back.
Yes, and I wanted to ask. I do like this guy, this neighbor character. He's kind of combined into we combine a couple different characters in the remake and kind of invent the Elias Koteas detective character. I will say I think I prefer the detective version than this neighbor guy. Like they're doing different things,
I mean,
but I do
one of
like how
them
that's
is
handled.
Norwegian Liam Neeson, the other is Casey Jones. Like,
Yeah.
no, I like the detective. It gives the town a little agency. Um,
Well, the framework is different. This is more about this particular community and what it does to them and watching it kind of fall apart. the framework in the American one is having this detective side story, like this investigation
Mhm.
element, which you do get here, but not until the very end.
Mhm.
But on the flip side, this character is this lady who's becoming a vampire. She's a lot more developed in this version, and we actually see kind of discover on her own what's going on, and that sunlight hurts her, and she's a bit more tragic, I think, in this one.
This is the subplot that stuck out to me the most in the book because this is something the book dedicates time to. And like me not being entirely sure what was going on, but then you get to that hospital scene in the book, and I was like, oh, like holy shit. Mhm.
And like so, this is one of those subplots that kind of takes its time more in this one, whereas in the American one, we speed through it a bit faster.
Mhm.
And this scene is real random, and I didn't know how to feel about it. Like, who is this guy? Because I have a couple theories, but
It's Swedish fucking Nelson.
but like the scene's really uncomfortable, and I'm not sure what's going on here. I don't know. Like, is
I
like
don't know what's going on here.
I think we're going for a parallel between like Eli and her companion and his dad and this guy. Like, is this his lover or something? I mean, this is this kid's parents are divorced and this is set in the '80s, but like I don't know. I'm just not sure. And then in the American one, we never get to meet the father, but there's this element added where his father's like, your mom, she's really into that crazy religious stuff, and I'm not, and you got to be careful with that. And I don't know what to. That's the weird thing about watching these back to back is like I'm making connections that might not be there. I don't know how to feel about this stuff. And Eli leaving notes for him. I mean, that's the American one too, but again, here it feels more manipulative. Like, oh, I like you so much. You are Eli. Just the way the notes are written, it still feels kind of manipulative. And I think the American one is going for a bit more sincerity with that romance, but that's just my interpretation.
Mhm. I want to figure out who that one guy is. Just 'cause, yeah, I don't know what the point of that scene was, and it's kind of bugging me. Nothing else
Yeah,
had
like
felt pointless.
yeah, and is he in the book? I'm not sure. I if I'm gonna throw a guess, it's the idea that this kid Oscar, his father, even that home isn't a safe space. Like there's still this element there that's hovering and makes them uncomfortable. But that's all I got. Yeah, and this is the scene with the CGI cats that don't look great. This was the big scene where I thought, "Ooh, I might have cut this," and it goes full schlock in a way the rest of this movie doesn't.
No, this shouldn't be here.
And I was not surprised when this was not in the American one.
That was
I I
ridiculous.
I would not have done this. It
I
reminds me, like, okay, is there a weird thing in vampire folklore of like cats not liking vampires or cats attacking vampires that I just don't know about? Because that's a big part of Stephen King's Sleepwalkers, and that's the
Mhm.
only other example I can think of. But that movie is schlock, cartoony nonsense, start to finish. And here, it just really feels out of place. Like it's set up. There are a couple scenes earlier with some of the cats hissing at Eli, who can sense that she's evil. But here, like that just went way too cartoony for this material.
The only thing I can think of is that might be like a reference to the Mummy, because in if you remember in the Mummy, the '90s one, Emotep is afraid of cats because they're seen as like guardians of the underworld.
That's true, but that's only a thing in that version. That's not a thing in the Universal ones. And I'd be
No, but
surprised if
that
the
is like Egyptian
but
mythology
but
that
it
they
might
were.
be okay. Well, because in the first Universal one, like he has a cat, like it's a companion.
Mhm.
It's not it'd be. Although I do like the headcanon that the writer of Let the Right One In was specifically inspired by that element of Brendan Fraser's The Mummy. It was like I got to put that in here in my sad vampire coming of age story about
I mean, I
pedophilia
can't think of any other reason why
and murder.
it's in there.
One day I'm gonna make you watch Sleepwalkers because there are a lot of scenes like that.
That's
Oh
beautiful.
boy.
That's my favorite scene in this movie so far. So I can't even tell who that other guy is, but all Wikipedia says about the dad is that his uh, drinking habits caused him to become neglectful of his son. So maybe that was just to show, oh, this guy came over for a drink and he immediately abandons the game that
No.
he was playing with his dad or with his son.
Yeah, that takes more priority over his own son. And like I said, the mom being neglectful is an element given a bit more emphasis in the other version.
Oh, the actress that plays Karen Wheeler was on Supergirl.
Oh, cool.
I cannot pronounce this character's name, but oh, she was on that Dead Zone show that we were talking about.
Oh,
I think we're obligated to do a commentary on like the pilot for that because it's based on a Stephen King thing.
have you ever covered the movie on the channel?
No, I want to though. I love that movie. Whoops, copied the wrong thing. That is her character's name in Supergirl. I don't know how to say that.
Gimine. Nailed it.
Yeah, I think I've just settled on I'm not a fan of this cold cinematography for a vampire movie.
I like it just because it's very cold and sterile. Like, oh, like the walls in this apartment are just so white and ugly.
It looks better here. The daytime shots are where it really looks ugly. and not in like a good way.
But this is an element cut from the American one that I think is a mistake. Yeah, because here it does establish that she has money.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it's stolen, or also has gold, and that's cut from the American one, which does make the ending of that version a bit more problematic. Where it's like, wait, how does he afford? Like, what are they gonna do? So I am surprised that they cut that. That in this instance implied like, oh yeah, she just has like money that she's stolen and accumulated over the years, so her and her companions can just go from town to town and just afford like just cheap apartments and really dirty basic living. Also, what kind of name is Lackey?
Well, he's from Lucky.
But like I said, this scene is a lot more sad in this, where like she understands what she's become and what's going on.
That's also why I
It
don't
is.
mind for this case just the bite turning them, is because there's a story there, and
Mhm.
it's still
They
tragic.
play it at their twist on vampire stuff, and this it's more of the infection angle. That's how she describes it. Is, oh, I got infected when that kid bit me.
What was that movie, Robert, that you wanted me to see if was on here on our wheel?
Oh shoot. Was it The Omen?
Maybe we were talking about something last night. I'll put the Omen on here.
I can't wait to get to that remake. I
I'm
shouldn't
just
have
telling
even
you.
mentioned
I'm just telling you now. If we land on that next, I'm vetoing it.
it.
I need some distance
Yeah.
from that fucking movie. Poor Leaf Schreiber, man.
He deserves a better career. Like I said, this scene is very reminiscent of a scene in Midnight Mass,
Yes.
where she knows what's going on, and is choosing to take herself out, and it's brutal.
Thanks for reminding me that asshole.
Now, this is an interesting change. This bully kid, his older brother, is arguably more evil in the American one, which makes the bully kid more evil in this one. Because the American one frames that as much more of a, oh, this is an abusive relationship, like that we're this is more about the cycle of abuse and bullying and violence. Here, he and his brother seem pretty close. His brother's gonna do some really fucked up shit for him at the end of this.
This is a thing I appreciate that this has too, is the you have to invite them in.
Yeah.
Uh,
Wait,
Buffy has a lot of fun with that. Uh, like there's an episode of Angel where he's trying to save somebody from other vampires, but the guy that he's trying to save won't invite him in, so he can't do anything. Yeah,
it's a
that's fun.
question I've always had though, where I'm like, it's such a weird role And I'm like, wait, what constitutes a home? Like, geographically, how does this work? And what happened? That's something I respect a lot about the story is they actually show you what happens if a vampire goes into a home uninvited. In both versions, we do see the consequence of that. I'm like, thank you. That's it's something we always pay lip service to, but never actually explain or illustrate.
Oh, is that what's happening here?
Yeah, so she's decided to come in here and show him what happens when she's not invited. She's going to start bleeding everywhere. I was like, oh.
Okay, I wondered about that. So, because in Buffy, it's just like a barrier; they literally physically cannot enter.
It's like a force field.
And that show does get into that a little bit. It has to be like a person is living there. It can't be like a public place or an abandoned house doesn't count. So, like, if you're just squatting in like an abandoned house that is not a home, a vampire could still come in.
This is that type of makeup that just makes him comfortable. Like the blood coming out of the eyes, like ugh, can't handle it.
It's so good.
It looks so uncomfortable.
Okay, so sorry. Apparently, I've forgotten more of this. I do think I was wrong. You were right. She was genuine earlier. This is the I'm going to make this proposal now. I want.
Yeah, and this is cut down a lot in the American one because here you get more of the no. If you want to be with me, like you have to kill. You can kill. Like I know who you are. Like you can do this. Like it is pretty manipulative.
Oh god, that is terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah, and Near Dark's a movie that explores that, like the vampire justification for killing people. Of like, well, just look at them as animals, don't look at them as people. Like we killed to survive. You know, just the self justification. And then you get stuff like Doctor Sleep, where Stephen King's twist on it, which is very similar, but it's like, okay, what if it was like this, but like a hippie commune of vampires that just
And
have to
they
keep
fed off
killing and
like
going from place to place.
psychic energy.
Yeah, Stephen King does that a lot. He does a lot of like vampire adjacent things where it's like, okay, these are clearly inspired by vampires, but they're not literally vampires or
Which is
not
funny
vampires in the
because his
traditional
third
sense.
novel is just a vampire story. Like they are just classical vampires. Salem's
And
Lot.
which one? Oh yeah, of course.
Robert, we watched the shitty adaptation together.
It's almost like it was really unmemorable.
I'll never forget. Oh God, we could put
Yep,
that
that's
on
the.
our remake and original list at this point.
Yeah, I thought about that. It's difficult when two of them are mini series. I feel like we'll just cover those
That
in
would be
the.
like 7 hours.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
We'll do the Toby Hooper one, and then we'll just do the new one again. Be like, please God, no.
But yeah, we talked over that really uncomfortable close up shot, which I'm hoping was a body double. I hope for that, but yeah, it's earlier you said that
No,
you
because
missed the
I, I
implication.
I did miss that. I was like, why are you showing me this? Why did I need to
Yeah,
see
don't
that?
show me that. Yeah, so the idea is like, no, this person was born male and was castrated.
I
Eh,
I do think that is something that I would have rather been told than shown.
Yeah, same here. But the book apparently goes into a lot more detail about that, and it's really fucked up. So I think the idea in the book is like that castration that happens by the vampire when Eli or Elias is turned. Like that character is not just turned by a vampire; like they are abused and tortured by a vampire.
Mhm.
So it's like this really fucked up origin for this character.
Interesting. You might want to
And
reread the book.
it sounds interesting, but just really fucked up. And the remake, the reason why I know about this is the remake actually shot a scene that showed Abby her origin in that of when she got turned, and it was cut. But they don't do the castration bit. They talked about that in the commentary. So I'm pretty sure that in the American one, it's like no, this character just is a girl and has always been a girl. Like that's an element that's in there.
That's very American. Like audiences wouldn't have,
Yeah. Certainly not in 2010.
or
Maybe
not,
now.
not even audiences. Just a studio wouldn't have let that happen.
Yeah.
I don't care if it was Hammer Studios.
I think they distributed it. I could be mistaken, but I don't. I want to say that was an independent movie
I do know
when
they
they're
were the
making
ones
it.
that got the rights because the author of this talks about he inadvertently sold like all of the rights. So like
Yeah.
they were allowed to do a prequel comic that was unauthorized.
Oh, weird.
Hmm. Apparently, it is about the pedophile guy.
Ugh. Yeah, I don't want to read that.
Well, I don't think he's. I don't think they go with that anymore.
Probably not.
They learned the lesson that the Nightmare on Elm Street remake did. Is nobody wants to see that.
Yep.
That works in like a book where you could just kind of haphazardly mention it, uh, or like the people that are reading those are like, "Oh, I like this because it's a dark idea and like it shows how screwed up this is." The minute you put that in something meant for general audiences, that's a different story.
Hmm. And like I was talking about earlier, how the American one reframes the subplot as being a police investigation. In this version, it reminded me of Salem's Lot, how you talked about how that story is about the death of a small town. This is like about the death of a small community. And we see all these people and just living in this little area either die or just watch their lives just be destroyed to the point that then our main protagonist leaves and it goes leaving his mom to be alone and probably horrible despair. It's
No, it's such a just selfish ending.
yeah. And then in the American one, like you said, we always see the neighbors like from a distance, like from the kids' perspectives
Mhm.
primarily. You don't really get their POV.
One thing I would give this movie that over the American version, and this is just a silly thing. This movie has a kick-ass poster with like the girl kind of looking off to the side and like the mist.
Mhm.
Uh, the American version did not know how to like market this.
Yeah, like it's a movie, even though it's a good movie. Like I'm not surprised it didn't do well, especially in a especially in a post Twilight world.
I'm like, well, not even post. Like at the arguably at the height of
Hmm.
teen girls don't
But
want to go see a weird 10-year-old vampire girl that kills people.
I do like this reveal with the bathtub, which is obviously evocative of the coffin trope, but we still drop the whole like they have to sleep in their native soil. Like a lot of that lore baggage is cut out
That's fine.
and really
That
works for the
get, that could
story.
get really ridiculous. Like, just imagine a vampire carrying around a jar of dirt for 300 years.
I've got a jar of dirt, and guess what's inside it? So yeah, they cut that. We also don't do like garlic stuff.
Don't do a lot just in general. I feel like
I feel like it's primarily in Dracula stuff. Or when it's not Dracula, like a character will try garlic and then they're like, ah, that's a superstition idiot.
I know-
You do that a couple times.
We do that in Abigail. There's a thing with garlic and
Ugh. And the way she hugs him after doing that, it's like, oh god. This is I think this is the beginning of a toxic relationship. That's my interpretation.
I have that with both of them. So I couldn't find it. I was like I said, it was hard to find a good thumbnail for this. But the American
Mhm.
side of it, I have is that same shot where they're doing the hug, and Chloe Moretz just has like this look in her eyes. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, this is wrong. Mm,
This is gross.
what,
And please
kissing?
don't. Her face is covered in blood. Don't do that. It's unsanitary. Oh god. This kid likes the Smurfs. No wonder he's bullied.
Oh, a fan of the Smurfs in the '80s. What's the point of life if you don't have a dick? I'm excited to do Donnie Darko with you one of these days. I think that counts.
Yeah, I'd like to watch that
We'll
movie
just
at some
do
point.
we'll just do a series of every movie where they watch The Evil Dead. I can think of at least two movies.
And like I said, the score in this version is great. I like the score in the American one too, the Michael Giacchino one, but this one's just really emotional.
Oh, I didn't realize that was him. Is he just like a Reeves regular?
He must be. That's gotta be an early one for him too, or at least before he was like a big name. Ugh, that's the other thing with the Fearless movie. This kid's always covered in snot. He always looks like he's freezing,
Gross.
and it's just like, wipe your face.
Wash your damn face.
Yeah, I'll talk about it when we're doing that commentary. I don't know how much you'll pick up on it, but I noticed a lot of the Batman in his Let Me In score. There's a lot of similarities.
I don't pay attention to score much, like other than
Mm.
just how it's enhancing the scene. But I'll keep an ear out.
This fucking kid, he's like as bad as the main bully because he is also manipulative. This made me laugh so hard. the, the pool bad. It's like, yep, that's bad. It's it's an omen. And it just says pool in text at the bottom. Like, no, idiot. It's Swedish for pool. I'm like, no, it says bad, and I agree. What's gonna happen is very bad.
Why is there just like piss on the floor?
I don't know, but it looks gross. I don't like it. One of the most disgusting places you could probably ever be is a boys' locker room. But this little turn, it's kind of interesting. In the American one, the only bullies really developed are the main one and his brother. The other ones are just, uh, sidekicks or goons. This one, we have this kid who tricks the protagonist, who you think, oh man, he doesn't like being a bully. He feels kind of bad. He kind of wants to befriend him, and then the big reveal is, oh no, he's just fucking with him. He's still friends with the bully, and this is all just a ruse. Again, that theme of manipulation. That nobody's honest in this story, and it's really fucked up and sad. And then the other bully kid at the end of this one is actually spared because he's just crying. He's not participating anymore. Whereas in the American one, all the bully kids are killed. So that's an element I think I prefer on this one, just that the other two are at least a little more fleshed out and get a bit more to do, or just have a bit more substance to them. Because this like makes me so angry, like how this kid's like pretending to be Oscar's friend, but now we know, like, oh, you fucking liar. I hope you better die. And again, I'm gonna say this again in the next version. We need another adult. This is why you can't have just one teacher here, because he's distracted by a fire and then is locked out of the building. There needs to be some other adult in this building. What were the regulations in the '80s for after school activities?
There
It
weren't
makes me
any.
uncomfortable. Yeah, this guy, fucking psychopath. God, like that water, like it looks freezing. Oh God, this Hardy Boys looking motherfucker. Yeah, like so this little blonde kid, we saw him, hitting him at the start, and now he's like, oh fuck, I don't want to be here. I don't like this. Like that should be a meme when he just sits down and puts his hands in his face. It's like, yeah, I've been there, bro.
All right, part 18 of our The Last of Us playthrough just posted.
Woo! 18 of 72.
Of 36.
Oh, this scene's great. When you see his little legs kicking in the water, like, yeah, fuck him up.
I love the way that shot with the head falling in the pool, like
Hmm.
because you're not sure why the boy is out of focus until you see it.
Hmm.
And he finally washed his face.
Yeah. God, and like I said, he looks like he's freezing.
I mean, have you ever been in a pool?
Not in Sweden, but
I mean,
yeah,
I don't know
the
how
sun's
Sweden
so
tends,
bad.
but the one time that I've been in like an indoor pool like this, it was heated at least. When you go to
Mm.
like a public pool, you stick your
Oh,
feet in the
it's awful.
water. It's
Yeah.
awful. It's freezing.
Hmm.
I haven't been to a public pool in a decade, probably more.
I rarely swim. Certainly not a
When
public
I was
pool.
a
So.
real little kid, I would go like constantly. That was what me and my grandpa would do, and
Mm.
because he wouldn't pay to go in, I'd have to walk up to the fence, and they had this bench right outside the fenced area, and he'd slip me money through the fence to go get snacks and stuff when they don't force you to take a break. They had a walking taco that was just oh. Do they have those over there with you where you're at?
No,
It's
or
basically
at
just a
least not
bag of
that
like
one I've.
Fritos corn chips, and they put like the meat and cheese in it, so it's a walking taco.
Mm.
I do have many questions about this ending because this is how the book ends. How did he get on this train without an adult?
That I could chalk up to like it's the '80s. They're probably cool with it. Like you'd be surprised what you could just do without supervision back in the day. There was one guy I follow who's on YouTube who's an older guy who was like, oh yeah, like my parents bought me a ticket. I just like flew the first time I flew on a plane. I was like 8 years old and went by myself, and I'm like the fuck.
Fair enough.
But
All
yeah,
right,
and that's
let
uh
Robert. We have let the right one in.
we did. It's a sad movie. Now, granted, I'm just according to Wikipedia, when they're we pay off the bit with the Morse code. Do you know what she's actually saying or what they're saying to each other? Tapping.
Yes, right.
Yeah, she taps kiss to him and he replies kiss back. So it's like, yep, they're a couple now. And they're in this forever, and it's really fucking sad. Like this movie's a tragedy, and
No, it
it
is.
haunted me. Like it's framed as a happy ending, but we know it's not.
So what you're saying is that he let the wrong one in.
Yep, I think
Oh.
so.
All right, Robert. We're gonna take a quick 5 minute break. I'm gonna see if I can find that DVD or Blu-ray copy that I have of the original or the remake. If not, then I'll have to rent it. How are you watching it?
Uh, this one, let the right one in. I have a copy. It was a
I can
gift,
see that.
so this is my own disc. And the remake, I just borrowed. So I got to return that to a friend. I don't know. I didn't know if that was even streaming currently, so I just borrowed
It's on.
it.
Yeah, it's on Tubi of
Oh,
all
great.
places.
Yeah. So I'm glad I borrowed it.
All right, we'll be back in a minute, chat. And we're back.
We're back.
So, Robert, let me see your copy of this, copy of this that you borrowed. Let's see it.
Yeah. My wonderful copy. If you're wondering why the cover looks weird, it's because it's a 2-pack of The Crazies and Let Me In. Two very similar movies that go perfectly together for a nice rainy day double feature.
Why?
Uh, it's because they're both Anchor Bay releases, I guess.
So I did find
Just let's
mine.
just
I did
slap
not
these
grab.
together. Uh,
I left it over, but here's mine. So the part that's on your cover, that's the slip cover, and then it just covers
oh,
here.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind
So
of neat.
yeah, this is a little beat up. I bought it used. However, it does also come with the comic that I mentioned, or at least a sample of it. I don't know how anybody is supposed to read this. Robert, how are you supposed to read this?
That's awesome.
So this ended up being a 4-issue mini, apparently. I imagine this is just like a sample, but it's funny because it advertises the Dark Horse Buffy stuff in the back. That's aged well.
Oh, it's
Um,
totally.
the art's decent. Like there's Abby, and it's an okay likeness, I guess.
Yeah, that's not bad. I've certainly seen worse.
You and me both. Robert, you want to know how old this is?
How old?
The second disc isn't a DVD. It is a digital copy disc
Oh, it's one of
for
those. Yeah.
iTunes.
That's what we call now a coaster.
Yes.
That's its functionality.
Now I remember why I don't have this on Voodoo because this was pre-Voodoo.
The copy I borrowed does include digital codes that say they expired in 2017, but I should still give them a shot.
You should. Have you seen that remake of The Crazies?
I still have not. I haven't seen either. Is that on our list?
It is not, but I'm going to, now that I know you
Add it to the
have
list.
it, I'm going to put it on there, and you better keep it until we're done. No, I like that remake. I have seen both. I actually kind of prefer the Crazies remake.
You're not alone on that. The original Crazy, I guess it's probably a cult movie, but it's not like super highly regarded. The remake I've heard is pretty fun.
It's more of a traditional infection movie. Let me just make sure subtitles are on. All right, Robert, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
In 3, 2, 1, go. Wish I'd thought to look for this like when I watched it the first time. Although I have ad block, so like Tubi never gives me ads. Pretty sweet.
Oh my god.
Honestly.
Overture Films, a Stars company.
Stars.
Stars and Hammer. What a combo.
I'm shocked to learn this was a Hammer film.
They're still around. They're still kicking. That logo's really cool.
It
I wish they
is.
did more stuff. I'm like, oh man, there should be more modern Hammer pitches.
Okay, hold on. I forgot to reset the timer since we're just at the beginning.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, that's fine.
Because I looked over and it said, you're in 2 hours in. I was like, well, shit.
Like I said in the previous concert, I believe that this was an independent film, and then Hammer just acquired the distribution rights for it.
I don't know. Because, like I said, there's that whole thing with them buying the rights to this.
Mm-hmm.
All right. In 3, 2, 1, go. There we go.
But now that I've seen this, I'm pretty sure I've seen every Matt Reeves movie, and that's pretty cool.
I think I have also seen every. Matt Reeves. I haven't
He's
seen
just like
Cloverfield in forever.
he's just one of those low key talents that's very consistent. Doesn't have a ton of movies, but I don't know where I'd rank him. But he's got a good shot at cracking like my top 10 favorite directors. I mean, he's made enough
He
movies I think are great.
he directed a romantic comedy movie in the '90s that I have not seen.
Oh, weird.
What's even
I guess that
weirder is this is his directorial debut. It has David Schwimmer, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Tony Collette. And
damn.
what's even
That's
weirder is he directed that '96 and then doesn't direct another movie until Cloverfield in 2008.
that's crazy. To be fair, the reason for that is probably because in that in between time must be when he teams up with J.J. Abrams and they do a ton of TV stuff together. Because
Oh,
I'm
maybe.
blanking
Yeah.
on the title, but I think that Carrie Russell show Matt
Oh,
Reeves is a big part
Felicity.
of with JJ Felicity. That's it.
Yeah, no, because I
So
look here
that
a
would have
bunch of he's got a bunch of TV credits. I've always been curious about that Felicity show. I don't know what it's about, but
but my understanding, this is probably incredibly unfair, is that shows like Felicity were big hits that JJ got a lot of the credit for. And then when you're 20 years removed from that, in hindsight, people are starting to realize, like, oh, Matt Reeves is probably the more talented of the two and had a bigger hand in, like, the
yeah,
good
no, I
stuff.
didn't know that he Matt Reeves was involved with that show until just now. Like, I've always just heard it. That was a JJ show.
It was a JJ show. Yeah, exactly.
I'd be curious to watch that show. It sounds cool.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I have seen every film that he has directed except The Pallbearer, and I don't know if I need to see that.
So,
Yeah,
how do
see
you feel about
already
this?
this looks more like what I want this story to look like.
Okay. How do you feel about this cold open? This flash forward.
Very American.
It's very American. I feel like
We
it's
know
a
you're here for the
trope.
vampire, so we're going to show you that there is something going on here because we don't trust your attention span.
Yeah, what I think justifies it is it does through this opening is where we're introduced to the detective character, and then he becomes a recurring character throughout it, where we get his POV. I think that helps justify this choice. That it's not like entirely random.
Mhm.
Because
I don't
we are
even care
first.
like how he serves the story. Like it's just good to see Elias Koteas in something.
He's great. He's so good in this, and it, like I said, this is an effective way to be initially in his POV where he doesn't know what's going on. This is all new and a mystery to him, and then we
If
splinter off.
if there was ever a guy born to play, I'm too old for this detective. Besides Danny Glover, it's Elias Koteas.
I hope Matt Reeves puts him in another movie. Put him in the Batman 2.
He
He
would have.
needs more work.
He's not overweight, but I think he'd be a really good Bullock.
Oh, he'd be a great Bullock. Yeah, I'd love that.
Honestly, maybe this would be pushing it. If we didn't already have a Gordon, I would have said he could have been a decent Gordon.
Oh, totally. And like you said, this opening gets very American. Like, we need you to know this is a horror film. It's about vampires. We're not
That's what's so
gonna
powerful about
make you
it.
wait for the scary. We're not gonna make you wait for the scary stuff. It's also a trope we've done a lot in recent years of getting a prologue and then jumping 2 weeks earlier, 1 year earlier, and it's something we're kind of sick of now. But maybe in 2010 was a little less overdone, so it's not bothering me here. And one thing that I really like about this remake, or what you should do if you're going to remake a popular foreign film, is okay. Well, if you're going to set this in America, actually let that inform the story. Like, let's see the differences in
No,
our
it's not
culture, or things
just
from our culture.
awkwardly Swedish, but with American people.
Right, because one addition we get that's not in the other one is the Satanic Panic. Because this is set in the 80s, and the Satanic Panic is a big thing in America in the 80s, so that's an element here with this detective where he's like, "Are you a Satanist? You're a weird blood guy who kills people. I'm jumping to Satanist," and like he's not super far off. And then we're gonna see other little touches like that are very American 80s that I really like. And I think this scene is pretty effective. Where from where again from this detective's perspective, where we don't get to see the death yet. We're playing it up as a mystery. Like I would love to know somebody's reaction to this who doesn't know it's a vampire movie, who goes in completely cold, who hasn't seen the original.
So, like, I'm making fun of it because it's such a cliche at this point. This isn't a bad way to.
Hmm.
It's not as bad as like the Evil Dead opening, which is like,
Feels
don't
very tacked
worry,
on.
there's Deadites. You came to see the Deadites. We're gonna put Deadites in the first 5 minutes of our movie.
And it's very unconventional because usually when you do a cold open flash forward like this, it's something at the end where it's like you get to the end of the movie and oh, now that opening makes sense. Now I know what's going on. But we're gonna pay this off like at the midpoint. There's still gonna be an hour of movie left when we catch up to this. So, like I said, it's structured very unconventionally, and I like the way they allude to like Reagan in this, where this is a time of fear. It's also a time of family values, trying to get back to old fashioned America, and or all care about the kids, care about family. And meanwhile, in our story, where the focus is going to be on a kid in a broken home, with
Which
divorced
is
parents
why
who's dealing with bullying.
I fundamentally disagree with the people that say this is just the same movie. Because the
Mhm.
moment you do this opening is a different film. The
Mhm.
scenes
Yeah,
may be
this is
similar, but they're accomplishing different things.
yeah, this is not a shot for shot remake. It
Psycho
rides that line.
1998. Thank God.
Exactly. It rides that line really well of being very true to the original and getting the same story while still having a different spin on it and updating it and changing
You
it.
know,
Like
if
it
Flanagan
rides
doesn't
that
want to
line really
do
well.
it, I would like to see what Reeves does with the Shane.
Oh yeah, he did good. That's what I want. I mentioned I was gonna mention this earlier. Whenever Matt Reeves' whole the Batman saga is over like 10 years from now, I kind of want him to do a horror movie after that. Go back to
Yeah.
something more like this. Because there's a lot of clear horror inspirations in the Batman and with his sensibilities. I'd love to see him go back to because with the Apes movies, he did something a bit more mythic and like adventure, crowd pleasing. Epic. Those were his epic movies. And with the Batman, he kind of gets to do a bunch of everything, like comic book, superhero, action, noir, horror, all that stuff. I like to see him do just a straight up horror movie after that. I think that could be really cool.
I love how much of an asshole his dad is. He called at dinner to like berate this woman.
Yep. And this shot's great with the phone cord in front of the kid. Like he looks like he's trapped. He looks like he's chained.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, this is a shit
He looks like
situation.
he's suffocating.
Mhm.
And as someone who grew up in a split home. Like I can relate to that.
And that's why this version works, because Matt Reeves could relate to this story. He was inspired by it. He had a take. It affected him. Again, this is not a cynical studio cash grab just because they have the IP, like that comic or that Showtime TV show.
Have you been having issues with YouTube chat? It keeps connecting and disconnecting me.
Uh, no, it looks good to me.
Has there been any chats that I've missed while I was disconnected?
I now I haven't seen any. Um, I will type something in just to see if it sticks.
I didn't expect a big turnout for this anyway. These are more
Oh
niche.
yeah.
This is self indulgent,
And,
Robert.
there's a lot going on in this scene that's different. Uh, this kid like acting out this fantasy, wearing this mask. Like, I get the impression he's probably watched some slasher movies. He's probably like into horror shit, because the whole like true crime element of him is kind of dropped. Like, we don't
Mhm.
get the scrapbook of like murders and stuff, but uh this version of this kid's also a bit of a peeping tom. He's also watching his neighbors. It's very uncomfortable.
What is he, Clark from Smallville?
And it's got the same telescope.
I wonder if Cap's seen this.
He might like this movie.
I'd be fascinated to see his like reaction to the way this movie ends.
Yeah, and that one's tough, because like, which one do you recommend? Which one do you think you should see first? Because I wouldn't be able to say.
I don't think I could say like. I guess it's just the one that the recommender prefers. So like, I'm gonna recommend this one because I prefer this one, but you might recommend the Swedish one because you prefer that one,
Mhm.
or just tell them to stop being a pussy and watch both.
Yeah, and this is an element more with this version than the other one. Of this kid's really interested in sex, and it's kind of a perv.
That's also very American.
Mhm.
Oh, you hit the certain age now. That is all you think about, according to fiction.
Like like little Tommy Jarvis in Friday 4.
Listen, if this had the bed jumping scene from Final Chapter,
It should. And that's an element. That's another element that they draw more attention to in this one. That is in the first one. They just put more emphasis on it here. Is that our little vampire girl is barefoot? Um, I don't know what we're doing with that, but it's in both versions. But it's like you were talking about earlier, though, with Buffy, where like they can't taste food anymore. It's like, yeah, their take on vampires. It's like, oh yeah, they don't feel anything. Like, they don't feel cold. They don't feel hot. They can't enjoy any normal human pleasures. And it's like, oh god, that sounds like a horrible trade off for being immortal.
it even looks like a peeping tom.
Yeah, he's a weird looking kid.
And
Good actor though.
he's been in stuff. I recognize him. I just don't know from what.
Cody Smith McPhee. Matt Reeves brings him back in his first Planet of the Apes movie. He's the teenage kid in
Oh,
Dawn
okay.
of Planet of the Apes. And then he's a younger Nightcrawler in Apocalypse
Oh,
and Dark Phoenix,
I
which
wish I
sucks because
remembered those movies.
he was good casting in shit movies.
I mean, I have that with all of the like young. their storm in those in Apocalypse is too good for that movie.
Perfect. Yep. But immediately though, I'm like, hey, this teacher's already way more attentive in doing his fucking job, and I like that.
And I know this bully kid from something too.
Oh, he's like someone. He's interesting because he just grows up and just becomes like horror movie guy. He's well, I mean, this isn't really horror, but I guess he's like the main kid in like the Goosebumps movie. That's something. But
Oh,
he's also one of the main characters in Don't Breathe, which I haven't
oh,
seen
okay.
yet. But he's one of those guys. He's also in
I did
Scream
like Don't
5.
Breathe.
I need to see that. But he had that face where I was like, I know this kid, this fucking Percy Jackson looking. He's got that shitty 2010 hair.
Is this
But
supposed
yeah,
to be a
he's in a bunch of
reference
stuff.
to the Eli Elias thing? Him and
The
changing the bullying from like little piggy to like, oh, you're just like a little fucking girl.
It could be. I have another read on it based on what I know about Matt Reeves. So I know that Matt Reeves is very touched and inspired by the story, and it was really impactful on him. I've also seen interviews with him promoting the Batman, where he's talked about how when he was growing up, he was bullied a lot, specifically for having a high pitched voice. And
Mm.
forgive me if I have this wrong. It's been a while since I've seen those, but I want to say he said stuff like he was teased and called like a little girl when he was a kid, and that's something that was with him for a while. So I think the parallels you're making might be correct, but I also think it's him writing from personal experience. Like I think
Actually, this
his
is a
bullying
Matt
growing up,
Reeves
he put
self
it.
insert. This movie's garbage.
Yeah,
Fire
he
James
did
Gunn.
write the screenplay. Oh
I don't know
God.
why related to this, but this movie should get James Gunn fired. And there is something I can see where this kid is coming from a little bit more because how many kids from this era did kind of grow up to be monsters, basically, just from like a
Yeah.
broken home or.
Hmm.
Oh, they reversed that exchange.
And this was a really big year for Chloe Moretz. This is the same year as Kick Ass,
Is that right?
2010. I believe so.
Oh, you're right. For some reason, I always think that's a 2008 movie.
Hmm. Yeah, just one of those really great child actresses who's in a bunch of stuff who doesn't currently have a great career, but hope she bounces back with something good. I also haven't seen a lot of her recent stuff. I just know she's in like the Tom and Jerry movie. It's like, oh, you deserve better
She
than
was in
that.
a Hulu movie, Mother Android or something. It was all right.
Hmm.
Mother slash Android. And don't forget, she was in the Adams Family, those shitty animated movies.
Oh, so with this guy, it's Richard Jenkins in this one. He's great as this guardian for Abby. when he and this is in both versions, when he later tells her, "Hey, I don't want you to see that kid anymore. Um, stay away from him." Do you think it's out of jealousy that, oh, you remind me of me, you're young, like she's gonna be more interested in you now, and I want her for myself, or is it, oh, I want to spare this kid from my fate? Like, which?
I don't have a reading on it for this version yet. In the Swedish one, I do very much read it as jealousy.
Mhm.
Like, you are mine.
Yeah, and again, it's very creepy,
Yeah.
but also very sad. I just wonder if there is a part of him that's like, oh fuck, like I should start, I should stop this before it starts. And okay, so this scene, a lot of the Batman in here, which is obviously calling back to stuff like Halloween, but their take on him with like the trash bag and everything, it's so his take on Riddler.
Mhm.
And you get that scene where he's in the back seat of the car and takes and knocks that guy out. Some of this is very similar to how he shoots that there.
Interesting.
It
Yeah.
also has some. It also feels very Zodiac, Zodiac killer, and being set in the '80s. Like this is still kind of like that stuff's pretty recent.
It was interesting because, like, I like him a lot, but I don't know if I can pinpoint him the way I could, like, say Fincher.
Yeah,
Because, like, this is very. This is very Fincher, and so is the Batman, but then, like, the Apes movies aren't really that. Cloverfield
yeah,
isn't.
hmm yeah. Like I said, stylistically, this is way more in common with the Batman than the Apes movies do.
Mhm. Like, this is gorgeous.
Mhm.
You're wasting
And,
so much blood.
yeah, you idiot. And yeah, it's brutal and plays out slightly differently because here it goes pretty smoothly until he slips on the ice and all the blood spills out. And the other one that's like interrupted by those people walking around and he has to leave. I think both kill scenes with this guy are handled really well in this version, where you just get the feeling that like he's done this a million times. You know, it's just routine for him.
Robert, I went from maybe seeing the American one once, and I've definitely seen the Swedish version, to I've watched these twice within 24 hours.
Yeah, and I will say these don't wouldn't recommend watching these back to back. You should probably put a little bit of distance between
No,
them.
because they are both very slow, methodical.
Yes. As opposed to something like Dawn of the Dead, where not only is it a very different movie, it's also a very differently paced movie. That's
I'm kind
you
of
can
hoping
watch
that's what we land
those.
on next.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, you can watch both of those on the same day and have a good time because
Uh, so just
two
because
very
this
different
came up
zombie
on my
movies.
feed, uh, I think we have finally hit critical mass with this popcorn bucket thing. Have you seen the Lord of the Rings one?
Oh no, I haven't.
I'm gonna send this to you. It is absurd. I don't know how they expect this to work.
Oh god, that's if 2024 is gonna be remembered for anything, it's the popcorn button.
Are you
That's so
supposed to eat popcorn out of that thing?
Oh, I want one. That's
I mean, I
amazing.
do
That is
too,
what I was expecting. It's
but like, you can't hold that without it going down like six other seats.
No, you stick it up your ass. That's what.
Oh, Jesus!
That,
What were you
I
expecting?
I don't know, but you finish your popcorn and then you fucking hit somebody on the head with it. It's great.
Mm.
Okay, this scene hits way too close to home. Really uncomfortable, serious assemblies at school, and then there's always those fucking twerp kids who are laughing at something really inappropriate, and you just want to die and not be there.
I'm gonna be
God, those are the
honest.
worst.
I was probably one of the twerp kids laughing at something because I didn't want to be there.
God, I'm not gonna get too into it, but there was one we did that was on drunk driving, and there was like a lady speaking whose like teenage kid died and was getting like very angry that some kids were laughing, and it was just like, this is miserable. It was like, Jesus, like very serious and very hard to sit through. There was another one. I don't know if your school did this, but where it's like, all right, we're now you're doing your assembly where we're gonna teach you about gonna have all the kids in the gym and teach them about Columbine, and I'm like, oh my god, like
No,
I never heard of that before. Yeah,
what?
it was just like, yeah, it was weird. It was uncomfortable. It was like, yeah, I get why we're learning about
Strange.
this. I don't know why it's an assembly. I was like, oh my god, I'm 14. This is sad. Oh god. And now we're back to the Rubik's Cube scene. I have a cousin who knows how to solve Rubik's Cubes and can do them super quick. And I'm like, you're fucking magic.
You should have changed it to something else that's more, I don't know, 80s American.
That's what I like about it, though, because it's just a very universal, popular toy. I mean, these were really big in America, especially in the 80s. And we do an arcade scene later. That's a bit.
You know what's funny? If this movie came out now, that would be Finn Wolfhard playing Oscar or Owen.
No, but he'd be too old because he's like 20 now.
Well, it doesn't matter. Or I guess even if this movie had come out even a few years later, it would have been Finn Wolfhard.
Mhm.
But no, Bette France has always, I think, been a really good actress that has never been appreciated uh,
She's
like
really
she
good
should have.
here. And in Kick Ass, she's awesome. Like, she steals the show.
He's
She's
so good
really
in
funny
Kick
in
Ass. And it is astounding to me that those come out at the same year. He looks older in this.
that.
It's also just like shocking. She's like 12 and she's in two of the most adult movies of the year.
Yep. This is the big scene. This big attack where she's gonna kill this guy and drink his blood. Where it's effective in both until she turns into a CGI spider monkey. That was a mistake.
Yeah, is it really that expensive to just put a stunt double and some wires? The lighting in this scene is so good.
Mhm. Well, this one, and I understand your preference, it's you get a lot more heavy shadows. You get a lot more contrast to this one. Everything in the first one is just stark and white, which
It's
I
a
really
spooky
like.
picture.
Yeah, this is a bit more of a spooky look. And I will say, neither of these, maybe the first one more so, like these certainly aren't traditional horror films. I don't even like. I guess it's fair to call this a horror film, but it's a lot of
Oh
other
my
stuff. It's a
god, I
coming of
didn't
age
notice that
story.
when I was watching earlier.
Yeah, this is the big one, and it's bad. It's too long. It's too over the top.
That was, you know what though? It's still better than the cats.
Yeah, maybe by a little bit. And neither are good.
The cats look like a scary movie gag.
Hmm. Yeah,
Also, why does
but
she
but
have
I
to
get.
like turn into something different? Like, just have her have things.
Yeah, I'm definitely kind of torn on it. Like this version has like a clear human form and a vampire form. I don't really need that.
Yeah, I guess that is kind of the American like. If you're gonna do that, just do like the Buffy thing, where they just kind of have like subtle prosthetics. If a TV show from 20 years ago can do it, you can do it. Come on, Reeves.
But I guess I should frame that as a question. Like, do you consider these horror movies? Like, they
Yes.
certainly have horror elements. Um,
Yes,
yeah,
just in the
it's.
theming and ideas, like
I think for me, it's just that they're so melancholy. I think of these as dramas first. Like, these are just really sad dramas. They're coming of age stories. There's a lot going, but obviously there are horror elements. Like, not disagreeing with you. It's just hard for me to put these in a box.
see, like Silence of the Lambs is a horror thriller.
That's
This
true.
is a horror drama. Midnight Mass is a horror drama.
Hmm?
Obviously, that's what makes the genre so cool because you can have zombie movies, slasher movies, drama, romance. This is also, in its own fucked up way, a romance movie.
Hmm.
You could edit this into a rom com. Let's try that.
like the wacky shenanigans of Richard Jenkins disposing of this body.
Yeah, you just put that like chicken dance music behind it, speed up the footage a little bit. It'll be fine.
Oh my god, she's a wizard.
You're a wizard, Harry.
Also, this kid's Australian and he hides his accent pretty well.
Nice. I had that with Naomi. To bring it back to mention, I watched Smile. I didn't know that Naomi Scott was British
Yeah.
until I heard her doing press for that movie. So I'm watching the movie and I'm like trying to hear like maybe any cracks in her accent. If I didn't know better, I would have said she was American. It's not Christian Bale and Batman where you could hear his English start to crack sometimes. Psychopaths. So is this the prequel for The Last of Us? Like in a few years, the virus is gonna hit. Abby was a vampire all along.
That wasn't her dad. That was just her protector, buddy. But speaking of accents, I think one of the best is Gary Oldman. When I was a kid, it blew my mind when I found out that Commissioner Gordon and Batman Begins and Sirius Black and Harry Potter were the same guy. I could not see it.
Oh, see, I never had.
I think he's really good with accents, particularly American accents. There's just one line in Dark Knight that always cracks me up when it slips. When he's on the roof with Batman and Dent, when he says, "They knew we were coming," and I was like, "Ah, there it is, you Brit."
Yep. Well,
You
no,
say
see,
new, you
I
don't say
knew they were the
new.
same person, but I always thought that the Gordon voice was his real voice, and he was putting
Oh,
on an
okay,
accent for Sirius.
that's funny.
I will never forgive them for getting Sirius Black perfectly cast and then not doing anything with him.
He's got some good stuff in the fifth one. He's really good in that movie.
The fifth one, though, that one especially, like, you needed to pad that out a little longer. It is too short.
Oh, for sure, but he's got some really great scenes. Uh, do you think this is too on the nose? They're watching and reading Romeo and Juliet, or do you think that's fine?
It's fine. They're not they're not Romeo and Juliet in terms of they can't be together, but they want to be. It's they shouldn't be together, but then they will be.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like in Romeo and Juliet that they both take their own lives, and in this story with these characters, it's like they take their own souls. You know, it's like,
And what would be on the nose, in my opinion, would be maybe like Bonnie and Clyde,
hmm,
something where
I can
like
see it.
they're together outside of the norm, and like they're both kind of bad people. But also, we should just stop like making Romeo and Juliet the standard for anything good or bad romance. That lasts like 3 days and 10 people died.
Well, I think it's just an often misinterpreted story. It's often hailed as like one of the greatest love stories ever. It's like, no, it's a tragedy because of these situations. Like, these characters didn't get to experience real life. You know, all it was for them was the fantasy. Like, it's a story about young love. It's not a story about true love or whatever you want to call it. You know,
And you
I think
should
it's just
be like looking up to that first place. Like
no.
you don't put yourself into a coma or whatever happens in that story to try to trick your family into thinking you're dead. This is very Halloween 2007.
Oh yeah, this could be at the same school.
I see that one kid is doing the very American. I have really long hair and I'm gonna wear like a toboggan. I had a moment where I didn't realize that was a bandage, and I was like, God, how far did they split his cheek?
It's turning into a deadite.
He's gonna be dead by dawn.
Yeah. Like I said, the way we shoot his mom in this is very interesting because we almost never see her face. You know,
Yeah,
she's always absent, like kind of out of the frame, which is why I didn't realize it was Nancy Wheeler's mom. But this is a good little bit when she's like, "Oh, you're reading Romeo and Juliet," and he's like, "Oh yeah, I have to for school. It's boring." And we know for her, it's like, "Oh yeah, like this is something she probably actually likes and has read many times," you know, and has history with. For him, it's just an assignment and not something he's interested in. Because most 12-year-olds aren't into Romeo and Juliet or Shakespeare. And like I said earlier, there are a few deleted scenes for this that I watched that also had Matt Reeves' commentary attached to them, explaining them. One of them is a little glimpse into Abby's backstory when she, like, it does confirm that, oh yeah, this was, hundreds of years ago. And what's interesting is the vampire who turns her is dressed in robes and has like a very kind of satanic look to him, really leaning into that satanic panic theme. Except apparently in the book that goes way harder and is a lot more brutal, and there's more like torture and stuff. Whereas here it's just the bite, but it's still really uncomfortable and hard to watch. And Chloe Moretz is acting really convincingly, but it's shot like kind of out of focus. But it's really brutal and uncomfortable. I get
Interesting.
why they cut it, but it's still like, ugh. It's certainly effective. It's this scene's interesting because it's in both, and it's weirdly even sadder in this one, where she really plays it like, oh, like she doesn't care about him anymore. It's like, just get out of here. I'm using this room. Like, I'm not looking at you.
Mhm.
Like, I don't. It's I'm you are just a pawn for me, and it's really sad.
As much as I do like the way this movie looks, this also is just like peak 2010s.
Yeah, it at least doesn't have the shitty blown out lighting that a lot of
Yeah.
those did, like a Scream 4. It doesn't go that far. All the lighting in this is reasonable and logical. There aren't lens flares covering half the screen. And there's a picture of Jesus.
Ian McGregor's in this
Space Wars. I like that, Miss Backman. That is a good arcade game. This kid sucks at it.
Remember arcades?
And like we said in the other commentary, this idea of just not being able to eat or enjoy anything as a vampire, like, oh, that really sucks. It's like they just want blood. That's all they can consume, and ugh, seems very unpleasant. And like I said, this is the big scene where she says, I'm not a girl. And in the other version, that's very literal. And in this one, like you said, the take is more like, I'm not human anymore. I don't see myself as a girl anymore. I think that's kind of clunky. Maybe just because the line's like word for word, and I don't know. I would have maybe changed up a little bit, but I see where you're coming from.
Mhm.
Like I said, it's kind of a different spin on it. And like I said, this isn't a criticism; it's just different. But my interpretation is that the romance in this one is meant to be a little more sincere, like just a little more genuine and both sided. which as a result is still tragic and awful.
I,
But
I
in
think
the
you can
other
almost
one,
read it as she's tired of her current toy and she's found a new toy.
hmm, which is still fucked up.
I would be fascinated to know what that sequel looks like.
Yeah, I mean it's just a short story, so probably not much to it. But yeah, it could be interesting.
I'm sure it's just like this is what Owen is doing X amount of years later.
And well, like you said, this is a kid who's just in an awful situation who just wants to grow up and leave. And I mean, he gets what he wants, but for him, it's a happy ending, at least temporarily. And even one thing that I appreciate the stuff with the mom though, it's still very subtle and believable that we get that conversation with his dad later about like your mom, you gotta not get caught up in that stuff. She's like a religious nut. She's crazy. They don't play her over the top. This isn't which Stephen King does sometimes. Like she's not insane. Like and again, it just makes it more tragic because it's very believable. It's like, yeah, this is just clearly a woman who's suffering depression and religion's just one outlet for her and something she cares about. But they don't go too over the top crazy with it because again, she's not abusive mom. She's just neglectful in certain areas that really count. Like maybe she's trying her best, but her best just isn't enough in this situation. But this scene's uncomfortable. It's very intimate, and you can tell, like when he was younger, that they probably had more of a romantic relationship, and now that's just gone. And again, you can still interpret as just her manipulating him. And I'd also like to see Chloe do more horror movies, but Carrie probably just wasn't the right fit.
Yeah, I don't hate her in that movie.
I haven't seen it. I've heard she's fine, but that you just don't buy her as the social outcast, and that it's
Oh,
just
that's
not
something we
convinced.
need to
That's what I've
add.
heard. Oh, okay.
We'll do the two theatrical ones. Well, not the TV movie won't count
We'll still probably cover that elsewhere at
at
some
some
point.
point.
We'll do a Stephen King miniseries month.
I do want to do a commentary on The Stand, the '90s one. It's 6 hours.
And I like how this sequence is handled a lot, especially in comparison to the first movie, where the result's the same. Where we're gonna see him try to kill somebody, but this time he's gonna fuck it up and essentially get caught. I really like the way we remix it here, where we've established what this version's routine is. You know, he hides in people's cars and sneak attacks them, and he's done this a million times, and now it's going wrong because now there's somebody else in the car that he wasn't expecting, and now we see where it's going to go wrong, and it's really tense. And it's something Matt Reeves talked about, where you should be pleading for, you know, these teenagers to make it and this guy to get caught, but because we the audience are have been in this guy's head, we're weirdly more nervous for him, like, oh no, it's gonna go wrong. It makes you very conflicted as a viewer, and I really like that. And there is a bit of dark humor here, just a little bit, where the guy in the passenger seat, like, he moves it back and like hurts him in the head. He like throws his backpack on his legs. Like, there is just a touch of comedy here that I appreciate. And to what you were saying earlier about the lighting in this movie, there is a lot more color in this one. There's a lot more variety, and there's just a lot communicated with this scene where we're focused on him. We're in the car, and we know we're at a gas station before somebody even
Do you
says it
think this
or
music
comments
taste
it.
pick is a little on the nose?
Probably, but I don't mind it. It's like, yeah, but it sounds good. But what I like about the lighting here is just it's very blue and it's very specific. Like, this is gas station lighting. Like, you just know it when you see it. In this reveal, he's like, "Oh shit, it's so good."
That's a great shot.
Hmm. And again, very reminiscent of the Batman.
Okay, this is not as this is over. This is on the nose in a different way. I mixed up my Blue Oyster Cult songs. I thought for a second this was "Don't Fear the Reaper," but it's not.
Oh, no, 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 no.
You
Yeah,
like
I
Blue
know
Oyster
what was it.
Cult?
I like the couple of songs I've heard, and this shot is incredible. This long take of going from the car, that will seamlessly transition into an effects shot of him rolling down the hill. Like, this sequence is really well done.
Now Matt Reeves, man, he knows how to make a movie.
Hmm.
This makes me want to watch the Batman.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
But you said earlier you were surprised that this is $20 million. At least you see the money on screen. It's like it's for sequences like that. Like,
Mhm.
that's an expensive sequence. Uh, a CGI Chloe vampire. You don't need to do that. But this is good stuff.
Oh my god! Yeah,
And
no
this is
that
in both.
that song choice was definitely on the nose, but I don't hate it.
And this is in both of him dousing himself with acid. Like, oh god. It's so fucked
It's
up.
hey Robert, you know what they call that? It's boiling acid.
Yeah, and I mean it's a couple things going on. It's both a suicide or an attempted suicide, and he's trying to make it difficult for them to ID his body, to kind of protect. Like even in the end, he's kind of trying to protect her, and it's really sad. And again, this is in the other version too, but here we've made a point of all the victims being teenage students or former students, where we're really leaning into again the satanic panic and fear for the youth and all like the paranoia and all that stuff going on. The 80s is all about fear for the children and needing to protect them, except when we hate and ostracize them for not conforming. That's the 80s.
I'll stop you when you're lying.
When this nurse walks back into the hospital, I want to just hard cut to the guy walking down the hallway with the shears from Exorcist 3. Just throwing that jump scare in there, like, oh god, they got me. But this is a scene where I'm glad we stuck with the other movie instead of going back to what the book did and turning this guy into more of a villain. Because here, and again, this guy is a murderer. Like, we've seen him do horrible things, but it's still really sad because it's all just for this girl, and this is literally the last thing he can give her is his blood and just letting himself die, which he does because at the very end he's trying to help her and he's literally given everything to her, and it's just, and then it makes you wonder like fuck, like how long has this cycle been going? She is like 200 years old.
Yeah, this
This
looks
isn't the first time she's
awful.
gone through. No, it doesn't look good. And it's mostly practical, but it did that Jackie Earl Haley thing where there's just a couple green screen spots for some CGI, and it just, it kind of ruins the whole effect.
Yeah, just like there's an uncanny valley thing to it.
Mhm.
And now we're caught up to the beginning of the movie.
Yep, and we're at the midpoint. I do think that there's kind of a mistake here, though. Uh, I don't like that we cut to literally the same footage from the opening because now we're back in Elias Koteas's POV. I think this whole scene should be shot differently. I think we should be following the nurse and just shifting the POV. That's my only gripe with it. But I do like this part though, where we get him looking out the window and then we see Abby there. Like it's still a satisfying payoff to how the prologue set this up. And we were talking earlier about a lot of these American remakes of foreign horror movies don't go quite as hard and are kind of sanitized for American audiences. This does that a little bit, but it's not too bad. Like it still was more adult than I was expecting. Like this still goes to some rough places. Like it's not toned down that much, and we still get scenes like this that are really uncomfortable. And I was just surprised we went there. But like you said, these movies are paced so methodically that they don't make for a great double feature.
Well, they do.
Well, one thing I'm surprised this movie had restraint on. Both movies cut away whenever she flies. Like we never see her flying on camera.
They fly now.
I They fly now. This movie did have the restraint to not give her CGI bat wings, or ever see her literally turn into a bat. We never do that in this version, so
Thank
you got to give it
God.
that. And why don't you wipe your face? You look gross. That's a lot of blood. That's what she says. I'm not a girl. I'm nothing.
No, I think
Uh,
that makes sense.
Although it is funny, when they were changing the title of this, originally it was going to be "Let Her In," and the author said, "Well, it's not technically a her," and suggested "Let Me In." It's just funny that they made that change when you look at the finished project. Clearly, that whole element we're just not doing here. Like, no, this is a girl. Like, you could have called this "Let Her In." And like I said, in the flashback they shot when she's actually turned and becomes a vampire, like she still has the long hair, she's still dressed like a girl, like clearly like that element from the books. Just that's the main thing that's just not here. And like we were saying in the other commentary in the Swedish one, it's just ambiguous how much that character like literally identifies as a girl, or if that's just all a front, just all a facade, just to trick and manipulate this character. And now I'm having deja vu because I'm like, what? We saw this scene already. Oh, right. It was the other movie. Because now we're at the ice scene. And again, we need more adults, but this guy's at least trying a little harder.
I don't live in New Mexico. That's closer to you than it is me. Where's all the snow coming from?
I don't know.
Is hockey like even a thing in that area?
Granted, that is a big state. It probably just depends on what part of the state you're in. Yeah, with how much snow is here, that is weird that they picked New Mexico as their setting. Because I know they did shoot in New Mexico, but I mean a lot of this is fake snow. Like they really
Mhm.
had a add to that. So yeah, why pick New Mexico? It's such a weird choice. And the teacher, the Mr. Zordic, do you know who that actor is?
You don't look familiar.
He is in The Dark Knight. Uh,
Wait a minute. Is it the
we're not seeing him.
Hungarian?
Uh, or he's Russian or something. The one gangster guy with like the longer hair.
Yeah, that's my
Uh,
favorite of the gangster guys.
he's
My
in the
dogs
classic
are hungry.
Yeah, that's him. And is a Brit in real life. Yeah, he's an English guy. I do like him in this. It's just a shame that they cut most of his scenes, but I do love him in Dark Knight. He's in our favorite gasoline scene.
He's also apparently in Creed.
He is in Creed. Yeah, he's the trainer, like in the first half, who's like pestering Rocky to train his son, and Rocky keeps turning him down, and then is like, "What the fuck?" He's training somebody else.
And
Yeah, that guy's really good.
he's a voice actor in Bioshock.
Oh, cool. He's also you wouldn't have seen this. He's in the final season of The Walking Dead, or like the second to last season, and he's doing like a southern accent or something in that. But he's
Yeah,
really
so
good.
he's listed here as playing Pope.
Yep, he's Pope. He's good at those accents. This guy.
No, I love him in The Dark Knight. He's my favorite of those monster characters. Although, what is it? Eric
Oh my
Roberts.
god, they found the thing.
Eric Roberts in that movie, I think that's his name, always makes me laugh with the way he goes, Ramirez. Like he's a fucking snake at the end.
My favorite of his scenes is when he's in that club with the girl, where he's like, "What makes you think I want to hear you talk?"
Ugh.
Yeah, in scenes like this, when they're like talking about potentially suspending him, I'm just like, "Fuck off! It was self defense." Yeah, I know he's a little psychopath, but they don't know that. These neglectful ass teachers and his mother. Come on.
Come on, what are you showing me here?
Yeah.
Mm.
Even in this scene, we're not really getting a good look at her face. Like that's a very deliberate choice.
Mhm. Not to
And
bring it back to Buffy again, but there is an episode in Buffy where she's talking to a character, and it is specifically framed so you only see like the bottom half of his face. It
cool.
reminds me of that. Everything
And
is
also,
Buffy, Robert.
I'm pretty sure it's a Home Improvement reference.
Mm,
Everything comes back to Wilson.
I mean, that's just true. I love this shot. Or like forebodingly coming towards the camera.
Mhm. And a question you had at the start of this was like, do you buy that this vampire even needs a companion? I think another justification for it, more so in this version, is it's clearly the idea is once a vampire is drinking blood or attacking somebody, like they can't control themselves, they become very animalistic. They need a companion who's not a vampire, so when he is killing people, it's very meticulous and careful, and you
I
know,
know so that he's
it's
lonely in this. This is a
mm,
very lonely character.
yeah. And I think it's around here where there's a cut scene with the teacher where he's talking to Owen in the locker room and says, "Hey, I know what you're going through. I had a tough time when I was your age. If you ever need somebody to talk to me." And Owen just doesn't really respond. He just kind of ignores him and leaves. And it's really sad because the idea is like, oh, like this teacher did reach out. It was just too late because he's already too infatuated with Abby. Like he's already on that path, and it's like in his head, it's like, well, I already have somebody to talk to, so I don't really need you. Um, so I get why they cut it, but it's a good scene. And this is framed differently because the dialogue's very similar, but it's acted so differently with the bully and his brother. Where in the original they seem to have a pretty close
I think
relationship, and
I'm.
here,
I think I'm a second ahead of you because I'm on the kiss scene.
oh yeah, I think you're. I noticed that earlier. I think you're a little ahead of me. Yeah, because now I'm at it. But with the bully and his brother, though, in this one, it's like, oh, the older brother is clearly abusive, and there is the cycle of violence and bullying that he's picking up on.
Mhm. It's all about cycles. This movie
Hmm.
is the editing the theme of the movie. Robert, your nose is all healed up finally.
Yeah, took a while.
That's what you get for getting into a bar fight with a sharp object. Mm.
But like the other version, he's gonna offer doing a blood pact. Also, oh my god, I used to have that chair. I just noticed the one next to her. I had that exact chair. That was my gamer chair when I was a teenager.
Yeah, see, this is a much more reasonable blood pact cut.
Yeah, not a hole cutting your hand open. Let's shake. What would you find more revolting, that or the spit in the hand?
Blood. 'Cause it's an
I mean,
open
I don't like
cut.
either.
I don't like either, but the blood isn't like in an open cut. The spit is just it's on your hand. You can just go wash it off.
That's true. I think if I'm in that situation and a buddy of mine either spits or cuts in their hand and I'm like, look, let's shake. I think my reaction is, you're not my friend anymore, and I'm leaving.
Come on, Robert. Well, let's do it.
Ew, don't do that,
Stop with the
Abby.
CGI. He's not a monkey. No, this one especially, this version, she's a wild animal.
Mm. Like, oh my god. And like, so at least we're consistent with it. You know, we don't shift POV to these neighbor characters. We don't get to know them. We always see them through the kid's eyes. Do you still wish they had found a way to develop this character a little more? So it happens to her as a little more sad because like I do prefer it in the first version.
I like that that's in that version, but this movie's already 2 hours long. What matters the most to me is Abby and Owen's relationship.
Mhm.
That's why if you're gonna do this again, it should be a show or like a mini series, and not something that just has the name slapped on, but in no way resembles. Meanwhile,
And
on the phone with Casey Jones,
yeah, such a weird choice that he plays two completely different characters in this, but
I mean, he's not
I
even
don't
putting
think
on
I
a
would have known it.
voice. Like I can just tell that's him.
It's still a good performance. Like I'm cool with it.
Ugh.
Like I said, I think we're maybe going for something thematically, like he is meant to kind of see a bit of his dad in the detective, or his detective is meant to remind him of
I,
his dad. Like maybe we're
I
doing
I don't know. You
something.
see this all the time. Just they didn't have the money to hire a voice actor. You got a guy on set. It's like I'll do it. Forgot it's Friday. I'm
So
like trying to desperately avoid wrestling spoilers till we're done with this.
so
School.
this kid fucked up. He called his dad and was trying to, and he asked him like, "Do you believe in evil?" He should have called up Doctor Loomis. And this would have become a very different movie. The evil. I can't get away from evil children. I'll be right there. I'll shoot her in the face.
He would too. Especially if it's the sequels limit. Isn't that so cool what I just sent you?
Mm.
I would kill to see. Although I'm not a big fan of their cell. Why? It's weird.
Also, an interesting choice this makes is a lot of the adults aren't named. Owen's mom is just credited as Owen's mother. You don't get her name. The detective is just the detective.
Mhm.
I kind of like that choice. Like I said, I do think it's weird to cut the bit where she shows him all the money she has, because that's kind of important for the end and where they go. Like it's a nitpick, but
Okay, so that image is significantly less cooler. I did some research and it's an AI image.
oh,
I couldn't
you
tell just
fraud.
looking.
And this is the big thing that where we go from subtext to just text. In the other version, it's entirely ambiguous who her companion is and how long they've been together and what that relationship is. No, this version confirms that, oh, she met that guy when he was a child and she has ruined his life. And he is now dead, and she's gonna do the same thing to this kid, and it's a fucking tragedy.
It is, but that's what I love about this version.
Hmm. Yeah, and I forgot that they did make a point of showing that that he had that birthmark in that photo that we gave Richard Jenkins as the older version. So we do make that super literal. And again, it is a departure from the book because, as you said in the book, that character is a lot older when he and Abby or Eli meet. And I do prefer this. And yeah, it's just like an awful cycle that this implies. That yep, she's learned nothing, she hasn't changed, and she's gonna go through that whole experience all over again with Owen.
And you just know there's got to be somebody out there that like completely misunderstands this. I think that's how like a wholesome relationship.
Yep. So I like how this scene, takes its time. She's waking up, she's smelling the blood, she's changing, and it's really fucked up and disturbing. Remember in the New Salem's Lot when we just hard cut that kid just sucking down a pack of blood and then dies? And you're like, and it happens in the span of like 30 seconds. And you're like, what the fuck?
This does this is a little too over the top. I think.
I like, you mean like the fire bit?
Yeah, the
Uh,
nurse on fire.
the that part's really funny. But I just love the shot of Elias Koteas and the other guy just talking, and in the background we're seeing her much on the blood. That shot's really cool. But
No,
yeah,
that is.
when
But once you get to like the nurses on fire,
and again, it's different because in the other version it's a lot sadder and it's a deliberate choice of her taking herself out. In this one, it's clearly an accident. It's
Mhm.
just a bad time all around. And like so, I do like the way we revamped that character because that girl's boyfriend kind of exits the movie at this point, and we pass his role in the story off to Elias Koteas, the detective, and it's really natural. It's a simple change that works. And I don't know if we missed it or if it hasn't come up yet, but there's a bit with the TV where we see the 80s ad that says like it's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? That was a big thing in the 80s because people were really scared about children getting abducted and murdered. Um, and it's like, fuck, man, being a kid in the 80s must have fucking scary. Like either you're worried about being, kidnapped and murdered by a serial killer or getting blown up by the Russians. Either way, it's a bad
So this was
time.
her audition tape for Carrie, by the way.
Oh. Except that was PG-13, so they had to make the blood burn. I'm pretty sure it was PG-13.
The blood being brown.
At least in the advertising. I haven't seen the movie, but I remember in the advertising, like the blood looking real muted.
I mean, it has been a minute since I've watched that. Like, I like that movie, but that is a case where I would rather just watch the original. I still think my favorite vampire movie is From Dusk Till Dawn, but this, this would be a top five.
Yeah, both of these are top 10 for me for sure. From Dusk Till Dawn's a whole other thing.
I love it so much.
Uh, I'm already. We just watched it like a month ago. I'm like, I could put on that movie after this. Like, I could, that movie definitely has the rewatchability factor.
You just want to hear Cheech talk about how many different types of pussy they have.
That's. I mean, who doesn't? That's my ringtone.
I know you're joking, but I kind of wish that were true because I'm just imagining you being like in Starbucks or something
Work.
or at work, and that just goes off.
Yeah.
And what I like about this is that the movie doesn't beat you over the head with the fact that this is a bad relationship.
Mhm.
As far as this movie, if you're just watching this and not thinking about it, this is a wholesome, like healthy relationship.
Mhm.
It's all the
They
subtext.
yeah, like they like each other. They have similar interests. Again, I think there is a sincerity here that they are going for. Like you said, there is a loneliness they're really emphasizing with this version of her, but there's still that underlying manipulative element.
Damn it! Now I want to watch From Dusk Till Dawn.
But you can't because you got to watch wrestling.
It's true.
Oh, there it is. It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?
Yeah, you are definitely behind me. That was like 2 minutes ago. All right, I have paused it. Tell me when a hand is touching a like a PO box or a mailbox of some kind.
Waiting. No. Okay. Now we should be synced up.
I don't know how we got so out of sync. We're
I
watching
have
these on
no idea.
discs.
I really like that detail that her writing is very nice and professional, and obviously not at all how a 12-year-old's handwriting would look. But obviously, she's been around for a couple hundred years, so her penmanship is better than mine will ever be.
And mine.
So my head canon is that this is Casey Jones. This is a legacy sequel to TMNT 1990, and he's playing him as very tortured over
Doesn't he need
killing
a
Shredder.
warrant?
Ah, yeah, he's an 80s cop. He doesn't need a warrant. But this scene is really tense, where you're like, "Oh fuck, I'm not. I know what's gonna happen, and I don't want him
Could have gotten a warrant.
to die." To be fair, and obviously, I'm sure 80s rules are very different than 2024 rules. Generally speaking, if a cop is knocking at your door and says that they are the police and like you don't answer, they're probably allowed to enter your home at that point because you are required to answer, and he knows that there's somebody in there. So in the
Yeah.
80s, yeah, I can buy that. But I die down. He knows too much. Owen,
Alan.
Alan, Alan.
I like this piece of music here. Very
Oh
suspenseful.
yeah.
Of course, the light doesn't work. You're in a horror picture.
Also, a thing I want to mention earlier, why this also has that similar feel to the Batman, is same cinematographer, Greg Fraser.
Oh, okay. We love Craig Fraser. Oh, Greg Fraser. Sorry, he's Australian. Never mind. We
Oh.
don't love Greg. We don't love Greg. Just kidding. Damn, he gets around. He's done a lot of movies that I like. He did Rogue One,
Yeah, it's a great looking movie.
and he did those Dune movies. Well, at least one of them was good.
The scene's brutal. And again, one of those minor changes that I think, um, again, I don't think it's problem, but that Owen here does have just a tiny bit more innocence, and that like it's still fucked up when he closes the door and lets him die. But in the other one, he pulls a knife on him and is like clearly considering actually harming him or killing him. Here, it's played a bit more like an accident or like this isn't what he wanted. He just says no, like stop, leave, and then it's too late. Then she kills him, and then it's like his turn here is just letting it happen.
Which I think is much more natural. Like, not that the Swedish one is bad. It's just that kid is too much of a psychopath. Or I'm sorry,
And
that was the
they
picture I
actually did,
used for the thumbnail.
yeah. And they did shoot the last deleted scene I want to talk about. That is in the Swedish one that they shot for this, but cut is that bit before she kills him when she's talking to Owen. Is like, you need to be like me, like you're a killer. Like I know it's in your heart, and they felt like in this version it just didn't add anything. That he was already kind of on her side and was going to go with it. It works really well in the Swedish version, but that's a bit I think was fine to cut here, or at least I'm not missing it. But she's giving him what he wants. He's lonely. He wants a girlfriend, and well, nobody's perfect.
He could do worse.
And like I said, it's a lot of the dramatic music in this that reminds me of the Batman. These Michael G. Giacchino scores, not like the main thing, but like the flare scene when he's saving those people, like a lot of like the emotion, like just a lot of the strings and piano, like there's a lot of overlap with the instruments he's using, and the type of melodic music he's going for that I really like. I still think I prefer the score on the Swedish one, but I do like the music in this.
Oh God.
Are you tired?
Yes, apparently.
Do you wish you were watching wet wrestling?
I mean, I'm curious to see what happened. We're building up to war games, but war games. No, admittedly, this is struggling to hold my attention because I've technically watched this story 4 times in the last 24 hours.
Same here. But this is a slow burn movie you actually like.
It is. But the thing that I find with this versus some other slow burns that I haven't is I like the characters, whereas a lot of the slow burns, it's just a bunch of characters that are either nothing or very minimalist, and you're just watching them do things until finally you get rewarded for watching them do things at the like hour 50 mark. This also never feels slow. Ah, yes, my favorite burned garbage. Remember when the kids at school used to go out and burn the garbage?
It was a simpler time.
Before the dark times, before the empire.
Like I said, I like that he's a good teacher. Just we need another adult here.
That has got to stink like shit.
Oh god. And this bully's brother, like he's so fucked up and evil in both versions. It's just framed differently because in the other one it seems like they have like kind of a twisted healthy relationship. Here this bully's brother is like also a tormentor and was calling him a girl and doing the same teasing that our bully's doing to Owen. And here it's framed almost like with this older brother, it's like, no, you broke my brother's ear. You don't get to. I get to do that. Like nobody fucks with my brother but me, so therefore I'm gonna do that to you. And it's just this really twisted psychosis justification. And yeah,
It also
this
just
scene's
looks
hard to watch.
unhealthy.
Mhm. God, this scene's hard to watch.
You fight very hard.
If there's anything positive we can say about the modern younger generations is at least modern kids are too consumed by TikTok and other bullshit to be fucking psychopaths like this. That's
No,
why you had
instead,
all these crazy Stephen King bullies. They're just bored. Like they got nothing else to do.
no, now it's making you wish you were dead online.
And like I said, in this version, you don't really get any development for the other bullies. Like they're just stock henchmen. In this,
Mm. I
and in this one, they
really
all
like the
die.
way this pool, like the pool lot, is lit when he's underwater.
Mhm.
I'm also apparently just a sucker for a blue tone. You don't see that often. I hope this gets a 4K.
It should. It's a good movie. Yeah, this movie's not talked about a lot. I mean, like you said, it's on like
I
Tubi or
forgot about it
something.
until we landed on it. And I own it.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the least remembered of Matt Reeves' movies, which is a shame because it's a good movie.
Better than Cloverfield. I'll say that. Of
Uh, they're very different. I do love Cloverfield.
course you would.
I do like the shots we get of the snow falling.
I like the blood spreading in the pool.
Somebody's gonna have to clean that.
That's your job.
It does make no, like when that teacher does get back in the building, it's like, the fuck happened here? That's he probably got fired, right? that that happened under his watch. Uh, his mom, Owen's mom's left alone. A bad time for everybody.
I'd be fine. She won't even notice.
Well, happy ending. The kid's on the Polar Express now.
You know what you don't know is there's a post-credit scene and it shifts into that awkward, uncanny valley animation from the Polar Express movie. Is he signing the same thing there or something different?
I'm not sure.
I shall research. Hopefully, the last time I have to Google let me in. It doesn't say.
And now he's watching the sunrise.
We
Happy
did
ending.
it.
He did it. Oh, it's so sad. Like it's even worse. In some ways, it's worse in this version because he knows like what his future is gonna be. He's seen it happen to the other guy. He knows that that guy was a kid when Abby found him, and it's like he's just accepted it. Like, yep, this is gonna be my life and how my life's gonna end, and I'm cool with it because my family sucks and I'm tired of bullies and just awful.
All right, Robert, where does this fall amongst the three remakes that we have watched so far for you? And keep in mind, it doesn't have to be critically, just your personal like ranking.
Um, you're probably gonna disagree with this. I think I'm gonna give Evil Dead 2013 the edge over this. They're really hard movies to compare.
No,
Obviously,
I
that one's a lot
actually
more
also put
rewatchable.
2013 over it.
Yeah, and
This is probably a
the
better
biggest,
movie. 2013 is just easier
yeah,
to
right,
watch.
like, which is funny because that also has some horrendous fucked up shit that's really difficult to watch, just in a different way, in a popcorn way. But yeah, that's a really fun movie. This is probably a better story, but there's some story stuff in that I like too. But yeah, I like both. I'd give Evil Dead 2013 just the edge of this, and then shock of shocks. The real hot take is I'm gonna surprisingly put this over Nightmare on Elm Street 2010. I hate
Noah's
doing
gonna
that.
be so mad at you.
It's I can't believe that movie's on the bottom of the three we've watched, but hey, maybe that'll change on the next one. But
All
yeah,
right, Robert.
Let Me In. Good movie. I prefer Let the Right One In, but they're both good pictures.
All right, Robert. It's time for our favorite portion of the show. We're spinning the
Spin that
wheel.
wheel. And I can't see it, so
Oh, you don't have the stream up?
nope. Well, I have it
Oh,
on YouTube, but there's a delay. Okay. Well, what did we land on?
the blob.
Ooh, that's fun. Okay, I'm cool with that.
I'm
Uh,
cool with that.
yeah, I don't need a respin. I love the Blob remake.
I do too. I have not seen the original.
That'll be fun. That's gonna be one of my bigger hot takes because I'm really not a big fan of that '50s movie, and it's really
Is
popular.
that
But
what you
let's
think?
see what you think. It's really popular. A lot of people. There's a lot of people who are like, "Yeah, the remake's good, but the original is obviously better." And I'm like, I think the remake's like a lot better. But we'll see what you think.
Fascinating. 1950s.
And if you look at reviews of the '80s one, they were kind of positive, but most of them were like, "Well, yeah, but it's obviously not as good as the original. The original will be remembered. This one will be forgotten." Like just everyone agreed or thought in the back in the '80s, like, "Oh yeah, this remake, it's like whatever." The original though, that's gonna be remembered. The original's fine. Yeah, and
All right.
also I will say the Blob. It's not that remake. It's not as good as like The Thing or The Fly, but I still like it a lot. I think it's a fun movie.
It's still one of the three like big '80s remakes of '50s films. All right, so we will not be live next Thursday. Are we
Thanksgiving.
still gonna go Friday, or are you busy that day too?
I No, Friday I should do. I should be available even though I'm taking Thursday off. But I'm up for Stranger Things season 3 next
All right.
Friday.
We're
Let's
gonna do
do it.
Stranger Things season 3 next Friday, and then this Sunday Robert wants to do Thanksgiving. So we're gonna
Thanksgiving.
do that. And thanks for hanging out, everybody. Have a good one.